Okay, why don't we begin our meeting? We'll begin with non-agenda item public comment. Can I call up Kimberly Santamaria, Steve Grant, Jennifer Andrews, and Georgia Fusecki?
Hello, my name is Kimberly Santamaria, and I currently teach moderate to severely disabled self-contained at Sarah High School. And this year I have the privilege of using both News to You and the Unique Learning curriculum in my classroom. And I use these programs for about 2 to 3 hours each day. So I just wanted to strongly encourage you guys to continue purchasing News to You for us, and also the Unique Learning systems, because we don't get a curriculum and we don't get textbooks, so we really need these type of programs to effectively teach our students.
Thank you.
Jennifer Andrews, District Counselor, San Diego Unified. To our board members, you represent us, the taxpayers, employees, and more importantly, the counselors who make sure children come to school with food and shelter. We take care of the homeless, the abused, children of drug addicts, children experiencing grief and dying, children with cancer, children at risk for suicide, and children who worry about their parents not coming home from deployment in our military, children who eat out of the trash can, and this represents this last week. We take care of these children who experience daily trauma, who have limited coping skills. These daily these daily issues impact academics and social relationships. You represent us and our children. We provide critical care, and we ask that you review and increase, not decrease, counseling to make sure we can provide prevention and intervention. Please review the indirect versus direct services to our families and our children. We are ready to share the positive results from our direct services from the results-based counseling. Be proud of your counseling department. We want to thank you for your help in making a difference in our children's lives. Thank you.
Thank you, Jen.
Sarah, 1 minute or two. How much time? Okay. My name is Steve Grant, and I retired last July from 30 years of teaching, the last 16 of them as teacher librarian in San Diego Unified. I'm currently serving at Sarah High as a long-term visiting teacher to fill one of the 12 site half-time teacher librarian positions for which HR has not been able to hire anyone qualified. I'm not here to plead for my job, but because I care about students and I want to make sure that you understand the particular role of teacher librarians in their education. Credentialed teacher librarians are still referred to as simply librarians. Most people think of them as essentially supervisors and managers of the library and textbooks, but that ignores their most important role. They are teachers, and they teach an essential part of the curriculum no one else focuses on, which they're uniquely qualified to teach: information literacy. They don't just teach individual students who may ask them for help, though they do plenty of that too. They collaborate with classroom teachers and teach entire classes, bringing the whole universe of both print and online resources into their awareness and understanding, teaching the students how to use those resources for whatever task is at hand. Because a picture can sometimes be worth a lot of words, I've given you each some photos of teacher librarians in this district teaching whole classes of students. Despite the horrendous cuts in programs and staff you've had no choice but to make, I want to commend you for keeping the half-time teacher librarian positions you've allocated to secondary schools. You do not want to lose these valuable teachers of information literacy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Georgia Fusecki, and I am the art teacher at Memorial Prep. I'm here to inform you of the possibility of the elimination of the art program and the reduction of the music program for the upcoming school year 2010-2011 at Memorial Prep. Memorial has always had a strong arts program. I have been teaching there for the last 13 years. Our VAPA representative has informed me that these drastic cutbacks are only happening at our school site. Our school administrators are currently planning changes in an effort to improve our school's accountability in math and English. Unfortunately, Unfortunately, their decisions are based on faulty rationale. There is over 20 years of research and evidence that supports that instruction in the arts has a positive impact on everything from brain development and test scores to study habits and students' interest and motivation in school. The arts are neither a frill nor a luxury, yet arts instructors have to defend their subjects time and time again. Even students who are struggling academically need the outlet and opportunity to experience success in the arts and transfer that back to their other classes. It's not only art and music instructors that recognize our subjects as essential to a well-rounded education. The U.S. Secretary of Education, Arne Duncan, in a letter to education leaders last August, noted that the arts play a significant role in children's development and learning process. The arts can help students become tenacious, team-oriented problem solvers who are confident and able to think creatively, wrote Duncan, pointing out that the Elementary and Secondary Education Act defines the arts as a core subject. Studies conducted over the past year have yielded the following. Schools with art programs have higher graduation rates and increase the quality of the school environment. Visual literacy is vital to our 21st century learners. Our Memorial Art students proudly presented their artwork at the grand opening celebration of the new Logan Heights Library in December of 2009. The Senior Public Information Officer, Dr. Marion Moss Hubbard, responded to us. The student art was stunning. We want to continue offering a positive presence to the community. Presently, Memorial students' artwork is once again on display at the annual art exhibition here. Ironically, as my students' artwork decorate the hallways, I am here to defend the continued existence of our arts at Memorial. Our administration needs to re-examine the restructuring for next year. Eliminating programs that work and are successful is not the rational solution. Indeed, we have had a lot of rain recently in sunny San Diego, but there have been a few rainbows too. Let's look past the gray clouds of resistance and with the integration of art programs, continue aiming to prepare creative, critical thinkers that will lead successful and productive lives. Thank you.
Thanks. And Georgia, Superintendent Koba, I wonder if you wouldn't mind looking into this, because I don't know why we're having a discussion about cutting arts and music at Memorial. That doesn't make any... You took the note. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Georgia. Yeah. Okay, Ann Fernandez and Candy Nieto.
Good afternoon, Board and President and Superintendent. Ann Fernandez is ill, and so I am reading a statement from her where she is addressing issues at the secondary level.
What's your name, please?
Christina Boyd.
Christina Boyd, okay.
Okay, thank you. The first statement that Ann would have shared was about a high school counselor who met with a student in the 11th grade who had a 1.54 GPA, which is, those of us who've worked in secondary know, is almost impossible to correct. She met with the student, the counselor, and the student said, you know what, I want to get out of this mess. I want to graduate, and I want you to help me. And the counselor said, absolutely. They put a plan together. She was enrolled in the HSDP program. Nowhere on the student's transcript from grade 6 through 11 did she have an A. The counselor met with her every grading period and any other time she needed encouragement. She went to night school 4 nights a week, got straight A's, and actually graduated with a 2.15. At the prom, she wanted a picture taken with her counselor. She gave her counselor the picture and said, because of you, I'm here. When this counselor is feeling discouraged or overwhelmed by demands, I look at her picture. She's a reminder of the impact that this counselor has and that we all have as counselor. It reminds us that she nor any student are just test scores. There's more to counseling students than analyzing data. And high school counselors particularly have 4 parties to answer to: administration, teachers, parents, and student. And oftentimes they're not all on the same page. The bottom line this counselor asks every day, as she tries to bring these 4 groups together, what is the best interest of the student? That and only that determines our course of action and should not be undermined by outside influences. We are advocates for students. We help them develop skills for self-awareness and self-management. Every student should have an access to a counselor every day at every school site. At the elementary level, some schools have a counselor 36 days out of the whole year. This is, on the other note, from another secondary that Ann would have read, is using results-based data. One school at a middle school is using the Y-Try program, Avid techniques, and some tutoring. They took the lowest students who were getting D's and F's, and they used the Y-Try, which is motivational. They got feedback back that 47% showed improvement, but 45% did not. The next year they used the same data and introduced tutoring and remediation and study skills. Y-Try and tutoring together show that 78% of those students increased their GPAs. Again, thank you very much for supporting counseling.
Thanks, Christina.
Hi, I'm Candy Nieto, and I represent the CBET program, and I don't know if you hear this very often, but I want to thank you. I want to thank you for the process that you are taking to do the budget cuts. You've had town hall meetings, you've had board meetings, and I think for the first time, I personally feel that you're listening to what's being said. I know you have difficult decisions to be made, and I don't know about you, but just with my program, the rashes and the nervousness that I've gotten because of this, and I can't imagine what you all are going through. But I want to thank you for the process. I want to thank you for getting reports and not reacting, but looking deeper, looking for more money, and looking to do things that are best for children. And I want to thank you at this time for thinking about CBET and how we do wonderful things with our kids.
Thank you, Candy.
Hi, I was under Section H. My name is Barbara Pongstracol, and I work with Candy with the community-based English tutoring. I just would like to thank you on behalf of all the parents and community members and the children at the elementary schools where we're tutoring. Our parents were part of the process. We had them write letters, which I think probably some of you received, and so I just want to thank you on behalf of all the parents and the children that we tutor for your support.
Good. Mike Lance. Is Mike here? Yep.
Good evening. My name is Mike Lance. My address is on record. I'd like to talk to you this evening regarding two different things. I'd like for this district to get a handle on our spending. And I think I can help you with a little bit of it by going back to the 34 years I've spent with the district and seeing the way things have been processed and how they're handled. The buyers and that type of thing at the purchasing department no longer have control, more or less I see, of spending the money or how it's being purchased. There's not a quality control of what material is being bought because we have this direct connect and everything else that's sent out straight to the sites. I'd rather see it go back to where the buyers have requesters or something there that they can review it and then see if it meets the district standards, then goes to the buyer and it's put out to bid, not rolled over contracts, which I see year and year happen time and time again. We piggyback, we have contract specialists, but we continue to roll over all the time. They come before this board and roll over our contracts. The spending that's out there on the site, we are given different vendors that we're allowed to buy from, and people go through the catalog and pick out that nice pretty chair that they like to have in their office, or Bose speakers, which I've already brought to this board, for their computers. And it's not just the regular money that you have here, it's a grant money. There isn't any control over it. I've seen 52-inch flat screens. I see furniture that's outrageously being spent to buy for sites. I want to see some control. I want to see it back to the buyers to where they can make the bids and they can look and see what's bid. I think we ought to also look into our standards of what is supposed to be bought. When I was out opening a site one time, we had brand new furniture in the site. We've changed our standards. We have built-in furniture out there in the classrooms. I had 10 bookcases to drop off into a classroom. The lady said, I don't have room for 10 bookcases. I only have room. I'm putting these out in the hall. Ma'am, you can't do that. It's allocated for that classroom. Things have changed. We need to look into this type of stuff and change some of the standards of buying and what we do out there in the schools. We're spending money frivolously out there, and it's driving me nuts after 30-some years of watching this happen all the time. I can't take it anymore. I got to come to you and tell you that this is happening. And there's people out there who probably hate me for saying taking it away from the sites, but you know what? I've seen so much stuff go out there to those sites. Cross pins, pencils. I'm sure that's handed to every student. You get it this week. You get it next week. I've seen all kinds of things. I see it every day. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mike. Is Shanna Spellman, is that part of the Gompers presentation? Keeler. Oh, Keeler. Okay, so Shanna, if you could come on. Yeah. Yes, please.
I'm Shanna Spellman, 1218 26th Street, 92102. I've been teaching at Keeler Leadership Academy for 5 years. I taught when it was also part of the district for 2 years. The reason I'm here is because I just received 3 letters, thank you, telling me that I need to decide whether or not I want to resign from Keeler and stay with the district, or resign with Keeler and, or the opposite, resign with the district and stay with Keeler. I'm here because I just want to know why. I know that you're extremely busy. There's a lot going on in this district. I just want to know why this, why now. Keeler pays for me, so I know it's not a money thing, and I would think that would be the biggest reason. With everything else that you're doing, I just want to know why now. I was asked about 6 years ago by the superintendent, Alan Burson, to change this school and reform this school, and I stayed and I toughed it out even though I didn't want to. It was really, really difficult, and we've made huge, huge improvements, and I would like to stay there. However, I like this district. I still want to be a part of it. I don't want to have to resign. I would like to come back someday. I'm just not done with Keeler right now, but I know in the future that I want to have that option to come back to the district and maybe do what I did at Keeler at another school in this district. So if maybe we could sit down, the schools and all of you, or you know where I am, you know my contacts information. That's about it. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Jen. The rest of the speakers are all part of the Gompers group, so we've got until 5:30 if you guys want to go. I thought it may be helpful to just take a minute if Superintendent Koba wanted to report out on our discussion.
Yes. The board has discussed the issue of the on-loan agreement with the charter schools and has decided to change its decision, and that we'll be coming out with a piece of correspondence essentially continuing the process with particular terms grandfathering the current existing staff at those 4 schools, but no future exceptions to that rule, so that we'll continue on the process, and you'll have that correspondence shortly.
Okay. Okay, so it's your prerogative. Cecil Stepp, Dee Dee Alpert, Lisa Maples, Cheryl Cooley, Katie Strom. Would you guys? I'll keep calling. Go ahead, Cecil. Yep.
Cecil Stepp, Chairman of the Board, Gompers. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, that's great. Jenny Parsons, Joel Spengler, Angela Saucedo, Michelle Evans, Allison Kenda, Vince Riverall, Robert Riles, and Joel Chrisman. Does anybody want to say more than thank you? Okay.
I look forward to this being the last time we have to.
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah.
Joel Crispin, principal at Keeler Leadership Academy, and I'm sorry, but we do want to thank you.
Okay. Okay, we'll take that as a thank you, as a collective thank you. Yeah, thank you, Cecil. Yeah, if you guys want to take a second, and we'll start the meeting. So that will conclude public comment. Well, they're blocking the... Okay, as soon as you have some space here, I'd like to ask the Air Force JROTC Color Guard from Mira Mesa High School to present the colors. Please stand.
Mark's on. Porch. Team. Halt. Order. Who? Left. Face. Destroy. Correct. Ready. Trot. Carry. Who's? Present. Who's?
Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Carry. Who's? Order. Who's? Right. Face. Port. Who? Forward. March.
Please be seated. Okay, I'd like to welcome everyone present today and those watching the broadcast and call the March 9th, 2010 regular meeting to order with all board members present. If you wish to address the board today and your name is not on the blue sheet located at both entrances to the auditorium and you have not already submitted a request for public testimony form, please complete the form and submit it to Ms. Ward. Speakers on agenda items will be called on to speak during the discussion of the agenda item. Non-agenda item testimony was heard at 5 p.m. and will also be heard at the end of the meeting. At this time, I'd like the ASB student representatives to the board to introduce themselves. Please tell us about yourself, what's going on at your schools, both academically and socially. We've got Lula, ASB president from Mission Bay High School, and Vince from La Jolla High.
Thank you. So I'm Vince from La Jolla High School, and we just wrapped up a Pasta for Pennies drive for leukemia research. And originally we weren't expecting like a whole lot of money to come in because we just dropped off these little boxes and it was for change. but people brought checks in and dollars and a lot of money, and so we ended up raising $920. So that was pretty cool. We've got our senior versus faculty basketball game coming up. It's March 19th. What else? We're wrapping up the senior exhibitions, and we have a career fair on April 15th. It's something that ASB organized. We're inviting people like throughout the community, like businesses, and to come and present, like talk about their business and their field of choice, if they're doctors or whatever. And our multicultural food fair is the day after that. It's April 16th. We are holding a rally, a rally for education here at the Ed Center outside on April 6th at 3 o'clock. And then our council is drafting a website, and it's called saveit.com, and it's the whole theme of it being education, and so that's like the slogan. And so what we did is we created a paper that we will send to all the legislators, and it's going to be in an easy copy-paste format, and so we'll have like a section where on top it'll have all of the different legislators of California, so you can copy and paste it into your email. And 2 days after our rally, we'll send it out, and we're hoping to send it all out at the same time, so it like leaves a big impression. Yeah. And and we have our student congress on Thursday here at 3 o'clock, so all are welcome to join. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Vince.
Hi, I'm Lula Bedhev from Mission Bay High School, and we're just opening up our Pause for Pennies, and that just started, so it'll be ending in 2 weeks. We're also opening up our talent show next month, and we're starting tryouts right now. We had our EAP test today, which is an English placement exam for college for our junior students and seniors who haven't taken it. We have a food bazaar coming up. This is where all the clubs would sell food, and it's a fun event for everyone to get involved in and join clubs and recruit, especially for freshmen who are new to the school. The rally, like everyone attend the rally. That's all that's going on right now. And our student congress meeting on Thursday at 3 o'clock.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Lula. Okay, we'll move on to our student presentation from Patrick Henry High School. Ms. Nakamura.
Yeah, we have, as a board, with Dr. Evans' leadership, decided to name this as the Year of the School Volunteer, and I decided to come forward that it's not just adults volunteering in the schools, but that actually there are, as we've had some sort of good examples here with the Pasta for Pennies, but we have students taking leadership roles in this, and there was one particular example. I know it's happening throughout the district, but I wanted to, frequently we'll have student exhibitions where people are singing or dancing or doing some sort of performance art, but I wanted to underline and sort of that this is also a volunteer activity that was designed by a student, brought together by a student, and organized by, managed by a student, almost completely. So the student is Ms. Kayla Sivak-Reed, and I may not have enough of these for everyone, so I'm going to pass them this way first. 1, 2, 3.
Screen, too.
And it's on the screen, too. But we had another student. I'm sorry that this is a marching band student because my reputation for marching band and supportive music is a little strong. I just want to know that I had another student that did the same thing in lacrosse at Henry and did it for the middle school students, and she wasn't able to be here tonight. I just wanted you to know that I do have a broader range of skills and students that I know beyond just the music program. So, but unfortunately, Rebecca Koppel couldn't be here tonight, so we're going to ask Kayla to carry the ball here, so to speak, and tell us about the program and what you've been doing.
Okay, yeah, hi, I'm Kayla. I'm a sophomore at Patrick Henry High School, and I'm here to tell you a little about the program that I started at Patrick Henry this last year. It's called Music Mentors Club, and the purpose is basically to go to the middle schools and help the students prepare for high school and middle school band nights. And middle school band night is where they come to Patrick Henry during football season, and they just play with us in the stands and get to experience what it's like playing with the high school marching band. And then we also try to improve performance and confidence levels on prepared pieces through individual mentoring and sectionals, which is a concept that's a little bit foreign to middle school students. So we just basically take them aside, like you can see in the picture up there, and they really get one-on-one time, so it's good for individual progress. And then we also try to encourage enrollment in high school band and share our high school band experiences with them. So it's just basically creating a community and, really encouraging them to, move on with their musical careers. So, okay. And this is a little bit about why I started the club. The main reason was because of my personal experience from the middle school band night, which I found to be extremely confusing, not knowing what to do, not knowing, what movements to make, and there's all of these traditions that they have that you don't know about when you're coming there, and so you just feel very foreign and lack of information. Over the summer between 8th grade and 9th grade, we have marching band camp where we prepare for the season. And during that, we just found out that we had no time. There was little preparation involved, and it was mostly due to the fact that we didn't have any previous education about marching and the marching basics. So that created a lot of questions that we had involving, enrollment decisions going into 9th grade year. And this is a picture displaying things like marching basics that we really had to work on that first week of marching band camp, like posture, staying in step, things that, as an 8th grader, I had no idea about, so it was just a foreign concept. And this is a little bit about how I began the program. I realized that something needed to be done. It's, really time-consuming to have to take each student aside and, make sure they understand, because as a group, we really need to mesh for marching season. And so I took the program and decided to make a club out of it where we would go down and introduce marching and have sectionals with each instrument and work on middle school night specifics such as pep band music in the stands and just sharing traditions like, for example, there's a picture of us dancing in the stands during our football games. And that's something that during middle school night, I was just standing there. Like, you don't know what to do because there's all these high school students just dancing around, And so that's something that we share with them when we go down to the middle schools. And this is a little bit about how I started it. I had to get the okay from the middle school directors, and they were really excited about it. They wanted extra help always. And so I went through all of the paperwork and advisors and created membership and leadership roles, such as vice presidents, one for Lewis Middle School and one for Pershing Middle School. And then we'll have a meeting before each visit just to prepare and just do scheduling. And then here's a little bit about what we've done so far with this group. We basically go down on all of the minimum days that we can. when they have regular days, so that we catch them in the last couple of periods and just work with both the beginning band and the more advanced bands.
Kayla, just one question though. How many students are involved in this when you do this at the two middle schools?
Around 26 are actually the high school members, and then we do the full range of all the middle school students. And so far we've done Pershing. We've gone to Pershing during marching season, which was a huge success. We loved it. Mrs. Nakamura was able to see that too. And we went to Lewis during concert season, worked with sectionals with them, and the middle school directors have just been so happy and really excited about it, and we've enjoyed it too. So here's a few pictures of what we've done, and if you can see, that's a bassoon, and that's one of our students, and these are beginning students surrounding him, and they are just so fascinated. They had never seen an instrument like this, and it was just so cool to see their expressions, because they just gathered around him and watched him play the entire time, and he taught them about it. And then this is William.
Another student.
Yeah, William, and
no relation to me.
And this is just an example of the individual tutoring. They'll pick up the instruments and actually play along with them. And then, just really working on the beginning, like the actual performances and basics. And playing for them will actually help them by playing for them and setting an example. And this is just a group of us at Lewis. And we take them into sectionals. Sometimes we'll combine groups. We'll have a few high school students for each section of instrument, so we really get to, just address every student personally. And then towards the end, we'll usually play with them as a whole, and that's a lot of fun because, it's like going back in time, going to our alma mater, just playing with I know I'm a sophomore, but that's okay. It's still fun. So. And the next steps for the club, some challenges we've been having are availability for the schedules because they don't, mesh exactly, and confusion with transportation. So what I'm looking at is probably just, having more enhanced roles for the vice presidents and maybe implementing a secretarial role. And that's us at Lewis. So that's me.
Yeah, I really was impressed with what Kayla and also what Rebecca Koppel did with the lacrosse team, that you had high school students who were acting as volunteers on their own initiatives. No one asked them to do this. I assume it will probably look really good on your college resume, however. But the community outreach and what it means for the students, I thought it was a great example of students taking their own initiative and really creating a continuity between two schools, but giving that example of volunteerism and leadership and initiative on their own right. So thank you for coming down and sharing that with us.
Thank you, Kayla. Thanks, Ms. Nakamura, for bringing that in front of us. Okay, we'll move on to Section C, administrative assignments. Mr. Koba.
Thank you, President Barrera. We have David Guzman from Teacher, Senior Army Instructor, Madison High, to Program Manager, JROTC, for the Office of College, Career, and Technical Education.
Great. Thank you. And now you want to do the Superintendent's Information Report?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I have a number of items I want to cover.
Don't we act on that one first?
We did upstairs.
We did upstairs.
Thought you did a public thing. Go ahead.
A number of items to cover. From our last business meeting, we had a discussion, and we'll have further discussion this evening of the Title I allocations. But there was a question of the use-appropriate application of Title I funding to adjust class sizes. After a consultation with council and a review of our documentation, confirmed that we, in fact, can use Title I funds for Title I schools for salary of teachers with the objective of reducing class size and LEA, as a matter of course, may use Title I funds only to supplement and to the extent practical increase the level of funds that would, in the absence of Title I funds, be available. We have a formal statement that is going to all principals, allow them to use that in their planning with school site councils for the coming year. Mr. Reinerson, our district relations officer, work with the SIOs and the principals to make sure that information is available, and we'll also post it to our website. In addition to that commentary, I wanted to talk about, I think, some really good, very positive events. This past Tuesday, the 2nd of March, I was out at Crawford High School. Trustee Sheila Jackson and I were invited to the Crawford IDEA High School 4.0 breakfast. And this is a periodic coming together of the students and parents or guardians to recognize that in the previous academic period they had achieved 4.0 or better. And in this case, we had 53 students from that Crawford small school there, and I was pleased that all 4 complex principals were there to help recognize the students for their achievement. In addition, I was back to Crawford and also to Mann Middle School the following day. Visiting Mann, I'm just amazed at the broad-based, diverse population in this sector of our city. Just talking to the students and talking to the faculty, we really need to focus our newcomer support, our translation services, and encourage an integrated approach to helping such a diverse student population. Very pleased with what they're trying to do. And I talked to the Mann staff about how they integrate with the rest of the cluster. We have to emphasize that. Moved on to a visit with Crawford High School Complex, spoke to both the principals and the staff because we are in the midst of putting together some restructuring solution for that complex as we are for San Diego High, and try to field their questions about where we want to go, how we want to get there. And over the next 60 to 90 days, the staff is going to be taking a real good look at what is going on. And what I encourage there also, to get the entire Crawford cluster from the elementary schools like Valencia Park through the middle schools such as Mann, all the way to Crawford, working and thinking together about what is the curriculum, what is the academic flow for the kids. So very good visits earlier in the week. And then on Saturday, Trustee John DeBeck and I were at opening day, so to speak. We had, I think, a very positive outcome of where the community and the schools, in this case Muirlands Middle School and La Jolla High School, funded between donations, fundraising from parent committee and the district to put together a multi-sport field on Muirlands, where we had, quite frankly, 2 years ago, I walked around what was a cow pasture, full of potholes, gopher holes, whatever you want to call them. And this sharing of funds resulted in opening day. They have a little bit more to do. They haven't quite finished an exercise path and a scoreboard, but they're getting there, and I think this will help both for community activities, the middle school and the high school. So it's a real win-win on multiple levels. The last thing, I just looking ahead, want to advertise, and we'll show this in Friday Notes and other media outlets as well, but March the 20th, ahead of us, we'll have what's viewed as the largest celebration of science in San Diego, and some would say the West Coast. It's the San Diego Science Festival. Our district staff has been collaborating with UCSD and a number of other partners to help putting together what will be a very good science and technology demonstration in Balboa Park. More to follow on this, but anywhere I can, we're trying to advertise for that. That's all I have.
Great. Thank you, Superintendent Koba. Appreciate that. Can I get a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
That's it.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay, moving on to information reports. Start with Mr. DeBeck.
I think I'll pass the. There was a good event at the Muirlands Field. It is a multi-sports field. It involves a soccer field and combined with the baseball field. And it is a good example of the synergy that you can do when you join the community and the district in joint operation.
Right, thank you. Ms. Jackson.
Just a couple of things, and Mr. Koba, I did come over to Crawford, the Crawford cluster meeting the Monday night before. Lots of energy looking at how to, work K-12 in that particular cluster, as well as some facility issues that we brought forward with a very good meeting. Last night we did our Lincoln cluster meeting. Again, a lot of good questions, a lot of good synergy, but those I did mention for Lincoln people that are here listening, I did mention the workbooks today. The principals want their workbooks, and I made that point very, 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 very clear. I visited Valencia Park, and the color is nice. I know last time I beat the stuff about using the same color, but they did paint it a different color, so the community thanks you. They're very happy to have a different color. They were tired of that other color, so thank you very, very, very much for that.
Great. Ms. Nakamura?
Yeah, I just want to bring folks' attention real quickly. There is an event on this Saturday. The Hearst Elementary School is having their 50th anniversary, and they'll be having a dinner. Hearst Elementary School, and they'll be having a dinner. If there are any Hearst alumni out there that would like to attend, it is actually the Big 5-0, which, since I passed that last year, doesn't sound quite as old as it used to, but it's a big celebration. I just wanted to put in a bid for Hearst. So lots of other events going on out there too.
Dr. Evans?
Yes, I was happy to meet a week or two ago with the elementary principals, and they're working very hard in terms of dealing with the budget crisis, but really pulling together on that. There are a lot of jewels in our district as you go around visiting. I was able to visit John Muir Magnet School, which is a focus on global citizenship. It's a K-12 magnet. It was also written up recently in the Voice of San Diego, and I'll just mention if anybody wants to know what's going on in San Diego Unified or in education, just go to voiceofsandiego.org, and I'm sure after I say that, Emily will have another article about something else tomorrow. But at any rate...
Shameless pandering, Doctor.
Yes, there we go. Well, I'm sure she'll catch me at something anyway. But it's a really, really incredible school with kids from families all the way from kindergarten through 12th grade, really enthusiastic teachers, and using a lot of Socratic seminar methods. And one of the things that they really showed was that you can have a full curriculum, you can go about things in a non-traditional sort of way, and at the same time you can still have very good basic test scores too. Also, recently several of us were at the Symphony Hall for the high school honor concert. It was just an incredible, beautiful concert put on by the leading musicians from the San Diego Unified School District, and this is just another example of some of the great things that are happening in our public schools. And to keep all of this going, we also had a meeting at UC High last week, I believe, with Assemblyman Nathan Fletcher, who is a co-sponsor for a bill that we've talked about before, to do away with the penalties that we've had to pay for increasing class size, which could result in about $20 million for San Diego Unified School District, and we're encouraging everybody to contact your legislators in support of this bill 2272. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Dr. Evans. So a couple of meetings ago, I think, we had the mariachi group from San Diego High School up here performing, and Consuelo Manriquez, the principal at the San Diego Arts School, had talked to the director of that program at the beginning of the year when he was just getting it going about what would be what would really be your dream to be able to do this year, and the dream was to have the group perform at Balboa Theater. So this Friday night at 6:30 p.m. at Balboa Theater, the San Diego High Mariachi Group is going to perform, and I would encourage everybody to come out and support that performance. Very exciting. And then I want to just also point out and thank the students at City College and across the community colleges in San Diego State and UCSD and the other universities in town, primarily for being a force that organized a very large rally and march in support of public education just this last week. There were over 2,000 people that came out on a Thursday afternoon to Balboa Park to send a very strong statement, and we're hearing the same statement being echoed at La Jolla High School about we just simply can't accept any more cuts to public education. And that group was very strong and part of a statewide and actually a nationwide effort to protest further cuts and to really stand up for our public education system. So it was a terrific rally, and now there's a group that's actually marching every day all the way up to Sacramento that's going to culminate in about a month in another large rally in Sacramento, leading up to a huge rally that we're hoping for on Saturday, May 8th at Balboa Park, back here in San Diego, being organized by the Educate for the Future group. So again, just thank you to everybody who's really standing up and making your voice heard right now. Okay, we'll move on to item FO2. This is the district's initial proposal for the San Diego City Schools Police Officer Association to bargain a successor agreement for 2010 and beyond. Can we get a motion?
Second.
All in favor?
No drawing guns now.
Yeah. We'll move on to item FO3, consistent with what we've been talking about, a resolution in support of the Local Control of Local Classrooms Act. Actually, Ms. Nakamura, if you would lead us.
Right. This particular act, if you haven't already gotten the message in your email, is one that will reduce the requirement statewide that you can have local initiatives. Instead of having to have a 66% two-thirds vote, you will be able to pass it with 55%, similar to what we did with Proposition S. Doesn't mean that there's going to be rampant taxation, but it does make it a little bit easier for school districts to, take back some local control, particularly during this crisis with state funding. That we can, in fact, put a parcel tax on the ballot and have some hope of having it passed. They've been successful up in Northern California in very wealthy districts getting parcel tax passed, but in some of the other districts it's been very difficult. So when I was up at the PTA with parents and representatives from the PTA at their Ledge Action Conference, they asked us to place this on our agenda, and as a Board of Education formally endorse this, and so I thought I can do that and brought it back. So if at the pleasure of the board, please vote.
Great. All in favor? Great. Thank you, Ms. Nakamura.
Yeah. That passes 5-0.
That does pass 5-0. Okay. I'm recommending to the board item FO4, the appointment of Kevin Alvin to the Independent Citizens Oversight Committee. Ray Moreno is needed to step off of the committee. This is a slot for a parent of a student in the district. Kevin is a parent of a student at Zamorano Elementary. So I would ask for a motion.
Second.
Second, yeah.
All in favor? Thank you. And Dr. Evans, if you want to talk about Power Up.
Yes, Ms. Nakamura was mentioning before about this being the year of the school volunteer. We're trying to really call attention to a lot of volunteer activities that have already been going on in the district and ways that we can enhance that programs. And really what we want to do is really broaden the scope of who can volunteer in the schools. This is a good example today of high school students volunteering with younger students. This can include senior citizens, young adults, a wide variety of people can participate in this endeavor. And just as an example, I think we're going to be mentioning something too today about a group in Detroit, about 3,000 people who actually stood up and said they wanted to make a difference as far as what was going on in their public schools. As a psychologist, I just want to say that there certainly isn't anything more important in terms of the educational process that the individual attention that kids can get. And we know that we obviously have a lot of kids in the classroom, and just a half an hour, 1 hour a week can make a tremendous difference in the life of a child in terms of having a volunteer there to help out. And so in terms of encouraging everybody in the community, throughout the San Diego community, to get involved at their public schools, I do want to put forward a motion which would be that all of the board members, who are also just as busy as everybody else, would agree to participate in this particular 6-week volunteer program.
I volunteer.
Second. Okay. Well, let's have this was not prearranged. Vote. So before we vote, let's hear from the staff about this to see what we're getting into.
Thank you for this consideration. First of all, as you know, the Power Up program was put together in response to the superintendent's Year of the Volunteer. And this program is designed to target support at third grade with students who are not quite at third grade reading level, but almost there. 5 schools were selected, and they include, and we have some of the principals here, Bayview Terrace, Fletcher, Lee, Sherman, and Whitman. And these schools were selected by our elementary school improvement officers. And we wanted to mention that this really was a collaboration between the elementary school improvement officers, the community relations department, the instructional support services division, which worked together to create lessons that could be used, as well as the school site principals. And the intent of this program really is 3 parts. The first is to really provide parent and community volunteers, as well as we mentioned possibly high school students, put them in a place where they can see the growth, and then also so they can find out that their work makes a difference. And then also to support student achievement in a targeted grade where we see the achievement gap just beginning. And then also, lastly, to raise awareness of the tremendous need of volunteers and to have a creative way to use these volunteers to help our students. So on that note, I would like to introduce Carol Hunter, who is going to speak to us a little bit about volunteers. And then lastly, we're going to hear from Eddie Caballero, principal of Sherman Elementary, who will discuss how this will be implemented at his site.
I'm going to speak to you as a former teacher and a current district volunteer. There's a lot to love about this program, and I think that one of the things that I love is that it's very user-friendly. I'd like to do a thank you to Donna Marriott and the folks who helped her from curriculum in putting together some materials that you and others like you will find very, very helpful. It's sort of on the scripted side, but it's also flexible for volunteers. And it focuses on sight words, and it focuses on word study skills that the kids in third grade just have not accomplished yet. And it's also one-on-one, which I think is really quite wonderful. And I think that another nice part of this is that at the end of the time that you're with a student for about 30 minutes, you read a story with them, and then they read with you later on. And so there's a lot of interaction on this one-on-one basis, which is quite nice. And I think that another really lovely thing about this is that the materials can be used again and again, and we can expand on this. And what we found was that we really needed to have a small focus. We needed to start small, and with the thought that we would expand and grow, and this is something that we really can build on, and the materials that have been created give us that possibility. The curriculum's designed to fit the volunteer schedule, which is really quite nice, and they can work with the assigned student once a week, 3 times a week, however it works out for them. And Donna told me that I think she said probably if 12 to 16 of the lessons are accomplished, that's a good number to shoot for. So there is that flexibility. Volunteers are going to have an hour-long training that will help them understand the program, the rationale for it, and the process. And the work of the volunteers is going to be celebrated at each school at the culmination of the program. One of the things that's most important to me is involving the entire San Diego community. Nellie said something to me last week about we're always tapping the shoulders of the parents to come and volunteer. And I think she's really right, and we love those parents and we want them to continue, but I want to tap the shoulders of you, and I want to tap the shoulders of everyone in this community. And that is what excited me about what's going on in Detroit. I have a contact now with Detroit Public Schools, and I'm going to be speaking to them about their progress. I've learned about this program in January. They came together in December, and they have already almost 4,000 volunteers helping with literacy in the Detroit Public Schools. And so I think they can we might be able to learn something from them. And they have tapped into a lot of people. And so that's the excitement for me, is asking Mayor Sanders, asking our fire chief and folks that work with him, asking our police chief and folks like him. And also, I have a huge list of people, actually, that I want to tap into, but I also want to call out to the media, to Voice of San Diego, to the UT, to SDNN, to KPBS, because that's what Detroit Public Schools did. Their Detroit Free Press is in collaboration with them on this, which is very exciting. And so I would ask that we get the press and we also get the media to be involved. Come into our schools, work with our kids, because one of the greatest things is you get to work with a third grader. And also, thank you, Mrs. Nakamura, for bringing on Kayla today, because this taps into, we can use our high school students in our schools with third graders. We can use them in our elementary grades. So let's tap into them. They do community service. There's all kinds of ways they can be involved, and this is just one of them. And I would like to see college students who are considering going into education come into our classrooms. And this is a nice way for them to become informed and work with a child and see what it's all about. And let's see, who have I left off? It's really just, thank you very much for considering this in terms of the board members, and you all know a lot of people. So we need your help in terms of your physical presence, and we need your help in getting the word out to everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, Carol.
Good evening, Board. Superintendent Kalba. I'm here with my colleagues, Principals Pam and Gina from Fletcher and Whitman, respectively. Each of us is working on training volunteers in the upcoming weeks. Each of the volunteers is going to receive their own kit to support the kids. We're going to find them a comfortable place to work with the children, and we're also going to establish a way to communicate with the teacher and the volunteer and myself so we could establish that communication chain. The program is going to focus on approximately 10 students at each site that are on the cusp, on the basic range, almost to proficiency, those that need a boost. It's not a remedial program. It's more of a program just to kind of give that extra emphasis and push to proficiency for these kids. The students will be supported in phonics, high-frequency words, and fluency. And the effectiveness of the program will be evaluated through end-of-program evaluations by the students and the volunteers, a pre- and post-test that's going to be administered by the classroom teacher, and daily monitoring of the students' progress. As Dr. Evans said, an hour and a half does make a big difference, and it's going to take a village to raise our children. Thanks.
Eddie, when does the program actually begin?
At Sherman, we're actually going to start next week.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Thanks. Yeah.
Can we ask some questions? Or?
Sure, yeah. Ms. Nakamura.
Nellie, she has some questions.
Yeah, well, first of all, a tip for Ms. Hunter, and that is the Volunteer Lawyers Association does have a group that already reads to children in San Diego Unified. So I know we normally don't like more lawyers in our schools, but in this case, it's...
there are other groups, too.
That's right, and there are other groups, but that's a good group, and I know it's been going on for a long while. You might want to look into that. But my question, too, is these are a lot of strangers that are coming into our schools. So what provision are we making for making sure they're screened and that they have the right intentions and, that there won't be any problems?
We've been working with Chief Braun and the Community Engagement Department to go through the new volunteer process to ensure that everyone is cleared, but we're also having introductory meetings between the teacher and the volunteer and the student. So we've been discussing the intake process so the students see the teacher and the volunteer together to help establish that trust.
Okay. I just want to be careful and make sure. I know that it also takes a lot of time as far as getting the volunteers screened. I've had some complaints from other schools that it's taking too much time to get them, and that's sort of demotivating. So I don't know if there's some special process you might want to consider for accelerating that, or for
Chief Braun has
processing them in mass.
And he knows that this is coming, and he's been prepared, and he has told us 72 hours.
72 hours, okay.
Yes.
All right, let's see if that happens. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, great. So we've got a motion and a second. Any more comment? Otherwise, please vote. Okay, great. Thank you, Dr. Evans.
Oh, you now have 5 volunteers.
That's right.
As long as we get fingerprints and TV tests.
Chief Braun's really on his game. He'll screen us right out. Okay, let's move on to item GO1, the 2010-11 Title I eligibility rankings. Superintendent.
President Barrera, this is a second reading. It's an action. We're asking you...
Move approval of the staff recommendation.
Which is the revised scenario 2?
No, the staff recommendation is...
Well, let's hear the staff recommendation.
Yeah, let's hear the staff recommendation.
As Dr. Campbell...
Let's hear it, yeah.
Well, that just puts it on the table.
you guys for a loop, huh?
We were immediately suspicious.
I object.
Well, it doesn't show the staff recommendation, does it?
No, staff recommendation is scenario 1.
Good afternoon. The staff is recommending the status quo, which is scenario 1. And it is the tiers where you would have the 40% to the 59 and the 60 to 85 and the 86 to 100 in terms of tiers and varying in prices, ranging from $4.34 with the top tier and then going down to 274 for the next tier. And then the final tier would be 168.
Yep. Question?
Okay, Mr. DeBeck.
Yeah.
I second the motion.
All right. The motion then is for scenario 1.
Yeah.
Yes, status quo.
And I have not heard from Title I parent group. Where's David Page today?
David actually conceded the last time he was here and said to go ahead and approve number 1. So withdrew his recommendation.
This is the same recommendation as
last time
parents did?
No, theirs was number 2, but he explained why that he actually ended up explaining why it wasn't necessarily feasible.
I want to know what the DAC said.
They recommended the number 2, didn't they?
Yes, they did. Yes. They recommended number 2 with the sliding scale with the $6 incremental change.
And their rationale for that recommendation was?
I believe David said something about there are schools that have a low population size, and so he was concerned that the amount of money that they receive was adequate enough to provide some type of resources.
And he believes scenario 2, or they believe, he's speaking for them, they believe that would happen under scenario 2.
Correct.
And that's my preference, so I guess I'll have to vote no on this one.
Okay, so we've got a motion on the floor and a second to approve scenario 1. Please vote. Okay, that motion passes 4-1.
Fair enough.
I know. All right. Okay, let's move on to item GO3, the Johnson Science, Technology, Engineering, and Mathematics.
GO2.
Oh, we did. Yep. Sorry, item GO2, and we have some speakers on this item.
Before this happens, I think it's misstated, and I really think before we ever get into the discussion, we ought to know what's on the table.
Okay.
All right.
So why don't we actually let Mr. Koba then explain what's on
I've
the
just
table.
had a discussion with him, so if you want, he can reiterate it, but I can point out what I think's a flaw on it.
Okay, so
it's up to him.
Mr. Koba, if you want to kick us off.
I was going to... Nellie, if you will come forward and explain what we're trying to do with this one. I think the board recalls that we need to adjust the policy in light of the budget decision that was made, and Nellie has been...
do it.
Yes. The Johnson reconfiguration...
I'm sorry, we're on item GO2 on the AP.
Which is also one of yours.
She wears a lot of hats.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Try to keep up, Ms. Myers.
Well, I like attention.
Well, I have to say that
yes.
The point of my comment was like a point of order, and I think I had a right to speak to it.
Okay.
All right? The problem is that this statement is that there's no fiscal impact to the policy. And the fact was, as I remember it, was we decided that this was a budget solution, that we were going to come up with a recommendation that we would not pay for AP tests. Okay, in So this, if we pass this as it stands, basically we have the rule that we're going to rescind the rule they have to take the test, they take the credit to get the credit, but we basically haven't saved ourselves a dime. So then the point I'm making is that I believe that we should rescind if we're intending to deal with the budget part, the actual thing should be say that we are rescinding payment for AP tests, not rescinding the policy about taking the test. That's a separate argument.
Mr. D-Bag,
go ahead, Mr.
If you look at, I did ask that question, and in our brown folders there's a response because, and the staff response is that yes, we are correct. The physical impact should be yes, with the dollar amount of $682,000. And so, because I know when we saw it,
that's not true, because if we rescind the policy, that has nothing to do with the money.
Exactly. But I think that this item was, in fact, to rescind that particular bit of money.
Then the statement should say that we are rescinding the policy of paying for advanced placement tests, not the policy requiring the students to take it.
From my understanding, the rationale was that prior to cutting that particular part of the budget, we had to change the district policy that stated that it was required in order to get the weighted credit. So one would precede the other. It could also be combined.
Okay. It's possible, and I've written down some options about the consequences. It's possible that we could rescind the payment and we still require that they take the test. Okay?
Correct.
The consequences of the consequences of that act, the one I just described, which is not what this exhibit is that you must take the test for weighted credit. That's number one. That's still in all these procedures, and I personally agree that that's the right thing to do. Some others might not. But then also in this policy, it's not stated, but we also have in our way we handle this that there is a provision for free and reduced lunch kids to take the test for a $5 fee. Not a $5 discount, but a $5 fee. So it saves them like $83 if they're on free and reduced lunch.
Correct.
The next thing would be the others, in order to get weighted credit, would have to take the test. Okay? So this is not stated the way that I would support. I would prefer to make the motion, if it was possible, that we continue the requirement that we take the test for weighted credit, that we rescind our payments for tests, and that that's it.
And essentially go back to 2 years ago, how we enacted.
It's a budget-saving process.
I can second that motion.
Huh?
I can second that motion.
Yeah, Mark, do you want to comment on that?
Taking both of these actions combined is based on the issue of the free school guarantee and student fees, which we've had a lot of issues with. It's been my opinion that if you hinge an educational benefit on paying a fee to take a test, and there is an educational benefit to the weighted grade, that there's a risk associated with the free school guarantee. So that's why this has always been recommended as a dual process, that if we don't pay for the test anymore, then we can't make a distinction in terms of student grades between those who take the test and those who don't.
Right.
If we were enforcing that issue across the board on other issues, such as extracurricular charges, I could understand it, but that's not the case.
I understand the legal issues on this, but and appreciate the legal support. It's always nice to have the law behind you when you're going to make a case. But I actually don't agree with rescinding the advanced placement test. I know that I'm probably going to be defeated on this, but paying for these advanced placement tests does a couple of things. It's not only for kids that are on free and reduced lunch and whose parents can't afford it, but there are certain groups of kids whose parents can't afford it and whose parents are just going to say, no, we're not going to pay for it because you're not going to college, or we're not interested in you pursuing this, or we just don't feel like paying for it. when students take this exam, I think it's terribly important. They are being tested against an objective measure with regard to whether or not they know this material. It's not just the test that their teacher has designed. They know that they're in with another group of students. It's actually beneficial just from that point of view. But in addition to that, there are materials. Once you sign up for this test and you take this test, you suddenly become the recipient of all kinds of materials that talk about college. You get them in the mail. It opens up a whole different world as far as university life is concerned. And for particularly these students whose parents can't afford it or whose parents won't afford it, won't offer to pay for it, or just are actually like me, too busy and forget to pay for it, it opens up a whole different world for them, and I think that it goes directly to student achievement. I believe it goes directly to their impression of themselves, because your mother and your teacher are always saying, well, you're really good at this. But when you get a good score, when you score a 5 on the AP exam, suddenly your image of yourself shifts because it's an objective measure. And I know it's a benefit, and I know it's expensive, but I feel morally obligated to speak out on behalf of this. There was a reason that we changed, and it was to help improve the graduation rate, and it was to improve opportunities for students to go to college, and even to affect the dropout rate. There are students who actually can score well on an AP exam, but don't have that image of themselves, and don't necessarily do well in the class, but take the exam anyway. So it's an interesting conundrum, and I just wanted to say my part.
But if I understand you correctly, I just want to ask her what you meant. Okay.
I would continue paying for the exam. I would continue to pay for the exam, and
that's all I want
for all students, though.
Okay. Yes, we previously on the whole budget issue, when we had to spend millions and millions of dollars, decided collectively that we would not pay for the exam, and this is really part of the shared sacrifice that we're looking at, which is difficult in terms of parents, in terms of teachers, students, everybody. I do understand that a couple of years ago, 2 years prior to now, that parents routinely paid for the exams, and there were provisions made for students who could not. However, since that time, it has been brought to our attention about the issues related to the constitutionality of charging for this type of educational fee, and I think we need to be since we're making this very direct change at this point, I think we need to be very careful with the law and follow it very carefully, and I think what we need to do is to continue to really support the AP exams, encourage kids to take them, and do everything possible to get a good outcome. But I think it's important that we do both of these steps. We've already decided on the step of saving the budget money through having parents pay for the exam, those who are financially able to, and we just need to take this step to make sure that it's done properly.
Jackson? Okay. Yeah, I guess I just want to, before the public speakers, I just want to go back to this question. So, Mr. Brzee, prior to last year, we were requiring families to pay for the exams, and yet taking the exam was necessary in order to receive the weighted grade. But your opinion is that would be a violation of the law to go back to that practice?
Yeah, I was asked the question last year, shortly after my arrival here, about this issue. And the opinion that I rendered is that either the policy on the weighted grade should change or the district should pay for the tests. And the decision was that the district paid for the tests.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, we'll take some public comment now. We've got Chris Lawrence, Valerie Stevenson, Kim Yorzek, Katie Anderson, and Roxanne, and I can't quite make out your last name, Roxanne. Yeah.
Good evening, Chris Lawrence, AP Physics instructor, AP Physics teacher at Mira Mesa High School. If we're going to continue to have an AP test, we should think seriously about starting the school year earlier, as they do in Poway. That crunches our testing schedule significantly. We are on a very tight schedule. Every day counts. The littlest things like Read Across America will sync a program. I have to make up a number of things with the students that missed, or if they go to robotics competitions or athletics. 2 weeks is a long time in an AP course. I brought with me the UCSD catalog, undergraduate admissions policies and procedures for advanced placement credit. You'll be surprised to see how all over the map it is once our students actually take the test. It is highly variable from university to university throughout the state of California and across the country as to what they will actually be given credit for once they attend the university. I didn't have time to make copies. I apologize. This is UCSD, and this is San Diego State. They have one page. They have a number of colleges as UCSD, as you well know. Now, let's just take, for example, the course I teach, which is AP Physics B. If you go to UC San Diego and you get a 5 on the test, you receive no credit for a comparable course once you attend UCSD. You receive credit for the non-science major physics course. So that does not reflect what is actually being taught and what is imposed upon us by the College Board. We're required to submit a syllabus, complete with labs, and we're required to fulfill the entire curriculum that the College Board demands. Now, this should be looked at. Now, I think in their wisdom, UCSD has done this so that science students, say, for example, those that want to attend medical school, can retake the course. It's the experience that counts. So I think that that should be taken into consideration, because oftentimes we stop at the shore and say, well, let's take the test, have a celebration, and we don't even know what happens to it when our students go off to the university. There's one other point that I'd like to make, and I think that we should start exploring this, especially in light of the fiscal crisis, and that is direct college credit via the Internet. There's a program currently at UC Berkeley. They take their undergraduate chemistry course, and they're working with the local high school, with the professor, in conjunction with the high school teacher, and they're getting dual credit, dual high school credit, dual college credit. This is the wave of the future with the Internet. Berkeley's copying MIT. MIT has their entire undergraduate curriculum online for free. They're encouraging everybody to take the course. I encourage everybody on the board to look at MIT's website. They're very substantial in supporting Massachusetts, which has some of the highest standards in the nation. And they function in that regard. To support the AP, they have an entire AP program, an entire support network for the high schools in the Boston area especially. So it's really nice to talk about passing the AP test, but what are we going to do with it once we get it? And I'd like to I'm requesting that another entire date be set aside for direct college credit possibilities and joining and partnering with the CSU and UC system and the San Diego Unified School District. If we're going to devote $682,000 to a test, it should be a test that garners CSU and UC credit with a grade point. Thank you.
Thanks.
Excuse me, I want to make one point of clarification.
Yes, ma'am.
You don't get credit if you're a science major. But if you're a non-science major, you can get college credit in a non-science major science class, correct?
I'll leave it with you. No, that's not true. What it states, this is at UCSD. At San Diego State, for the AP Physics B course, you get 1 semester's credit, not 2 semesters, even though I'm required to take the students through 2 semesters, and no laboratory credit. At UCSD, you're given no credit for a comparable course, which would be the traditional freshman physics course with laboratories. You're given no credit. You're given the physics for non-science majors, and I brought along
that's what I said. You're given credit if you're a non-science major. If you take AP Science in high school and you go on to be an English major, then you can get credit at UC San Diego.
Well, you're probably saying the same thing, but everybody gets, it's called Physics 10 at UC San Diego.
Yeah, but it's not that you don't get credit. You just, if you happen to be, they require a more rigorous course for science majors. And I think that's an important distinction.
Yes, it is an important distinction, but you don't get credit for the course that we're required to teach. But, and just to make the point...
it's more rigorous in high school than the one you actually get credit for in high school.
Right, but San Diego State does give us a semester. So they're just within our own CSU-UC system here in San Diego County, there's a distinction between University of California and San Diego and CSU.
No, I agree. It's all over the map.
All right, thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you for hearing me. I'm Roxanne Pompilio. I work over at the School of Creative and Performing Arts, and I teach several APs. I also score for the AP exam. I am speaking on behalf of continuing to require taking the AP exam in order to get the WANET credit. I think to do anything different would be to also devalue the exam and the rigor of actually taking the course. Schools that have done this where they haven't actually had the WANET credit linked to taking the exam, there's been a decline in actually taking the exam, which is one problem because a lot of students will just enroll in a course just to get the WANET credit without having it tied to either an end-of-course exam or having it tied to an exam. Also, in terms of the exam, it's linked to a lot of financial aid and the availability of different types of resources. And once a student does sign up to take that test, all of that becomes available. In terms of the financial ramifications, at our school, we have found money for every single student the previous years that the district was not paying for the exams. We've done fundraising, we've had clubs, we've managed to pay for every student that is enrolled that wants to take the actual exam. I also would propose maybe a compromise where the district does not pay the entire amount, but maybe pays a portion of the exam, which might lessen the burden of taking the exam.
Okay.
And I think that's about it.
Thanks, Roxanne.
I withdraw my motion. It never was seconded anyway.
Yeah, Ms. Jackson seconded it.
Go ahead, Katie.
Hello, Katie Anderson, and I'm here to speak to the AP issue. Not only the possible deterioration of the rigor of the courses if they're not required to take the AP exam, and I know that the financial decision was made a couple of weeks ago, and I wrote a fairly in-depth letter to everyone and senior staff, and I'm really sorry. It really sounds like you guys didn't get together to talk about this, and this affects 10,000 students every year, $680,000, and it's important and it's complex. You need to know that last year, in comparison to the previous year, we had 19% more African Americans enrolled, 21% more Hispanics, and 21% more free and reduced lunch, and that's partially because we were paying. I want you to know that. I know the decision's been made, but you could always move to change it. The other issue that I wrote about that no one has addressed is the IB issue. When you look at your policies, all the attachments to this item, policy 4705, 4770, 4845, and F7150, AP and IB have been treated equally throughout history. What about IB? What does this mean about that testing cost? How are those students going to be treated? What about their weighted credit? No one has addressed this. How can you move forward on this? Are you suggesting creating a whole separate policy position on IB from AP? What's the plan? You guys need to talk about this. So I would very much like you to, consider to continue paying for it because there is an inequality issue for the people who are not FRL, the people who fall between FRL and between the people who actually can afford to pay it. When you look at how much it costs over a career, a high school career, if you're taking 6 AP classes, that's $500. And people who are barely making their mortgage can't pay that. And I know there are equity issues as far as the weighted stuff, but if you're not going to pay for it, you should not give the weighted credit because you're reducing the rigor that they have to supply to those kids and the emotional academic investment that those students are going to give to the exam if they know they don't have to take that AP exam but still are going to get the weighted credit. And I really ask you to table this and come back to it or something. I know you're meeting on Sunday. Maybe you can add it on to that. Thank you very much.
Kim Yorchek, Mira Mesa High School. Way back in the days when Mr. Olivero was still principal, I was working at Mira Mesa, and we had a faculty meeting, a department meeting, and I'm teaching third year Spanish, and the teacher that taught AP was going to retire, and well, great, we're going to say goodbye, and they said, who's going to teach AP next year? And they all looked at me and I said, you. And I was stunned because I hadn't done it, but I went through the process. And this lady that had been teaching before was very nice, but she had combined classes, mixed levels in the same room, and only a few people took the class each year. In the first few years that I took it, it was combined. I said, if you really want this class to be worth something, it needs to be AP only, and they need to take the test. Okay, from 2004, I had 18 students pass, 72% pass rate. 2005, 22 students pass, 79% pass rate. 2006, 18 students pass, 72% pass rate. 2007, 19 students pass, 76% pass rate. This year, I don't want to mention 2008 because I only had 55%, but 16 students passed, 55% pass rate. 2009, 22 students passed, 92% pass rate. The math is simple to me. If you make it voluntary, if you do not make students pay, are you going to have 22%? I'm sorry, you're going to have 90% of 22 or 25, or you're going to have 90% of 2 or 3. And that was my experience. If you did not make it mandatory, if I did not say either you take the test or you get an APU, AP unweighted, and I always tell them APU because it stinks.
We would expect better from an AP teacher.
I'm sorry, okay. You have to have some of the low jokes in there too.
Yeah.
Okay, if you do not take this test, you're going to get AP unweighted and a lower grade because the students that take the test are coming here, spending 4 hours in the test under the conditions that are required, and they're putting that time in and taking every pre-test and writing every essay and doing every tape for that. Now, I can only speak for Spanish, AP Spanish, but as a teacher with experience and as a coach, seeing the same thing in athletics, if you do not challenge athletes, you don't get anything back. So I say we need to keep challenging them. I agree totally with Mr. DeBeck. They need to take the test and they need to get the weighted grade. And if there's a difficulty with paying, we still had the $5 reduced price lunch that they can apply for. So. Sorry.
Perfect timing.
Thanks, Kim. Okay, Ms. Jackson.
What I would recommend to the staff is that they take this back and rework it and address a couple of issues. And one of the issues is the IB part of it. Some of the things that was brought to my attention, and I just give you these items, and that the children knew they need the AP courses in order to be competitive in college. The principals need to set goals for increased participation for underrepresented students in AP and IB. That 100% of all the free and reduced lunch students must have a fee waiver on file, that we should just do that as a district and not just leave it to the individual schools. And that at some schools they have set up AP clubs, and those AP clubs can, they get about $600 through various sources. They can pay for, some of those exams. But I think, I'm only speaking for myself, I think that this needs to be a little bit clearer for us. We do understand that we do have a budget deficit, but so we need to look at that part of it too. But I think it needs to be very clear to us what is going to happen to our advanced placement and IB programs with our decision. And I don't think it's very clear here.
Okay. Well, there's alternatives that are not very satisfactory. Every time I get involved with the question of, I'll call it fairness or free or requiring people to pay, we get into this question. There's another answer, but it's not necessarily compatible, but I still think we ought to know about it, or at least have in the exhibit, and that is no weighted credit at all, and that the test is optional and between the student and the university of choice. And then what happens is you take the course because you believe it's good for you. You say, I want to take the test and I'll pay for it, okay? Or I will not take it because it doesn't matter to the university. And then it becomes it seems to me like that gets us off the legal hook of requiring payment for public education. And secondly, it provides the opportunity for those who wish to take the test to take it. So from my view, I think probably after hearing all the pieces of this, I'm pretty much convinced that we shouldn't provide weighted credit and that the test should be optional and be a choice between the kid and the college. And I don't believe that if they take it, that if they have free and reduced lunch, that they couldn't get subsidies. I don't know that. That would be part of the report. But you see, let's say that we say that the test is optional, but those that want to take it will get a subsidy because they're on free and reduced lunch. I think that's fair under the legal issue, and I can't move any further because it seems like my hands are tied over the issue of paying for or requiring and saving money at the same time. So that's where I'm at, but I think he's right. It ought to go back for review. And I don't think we should be able to count it as a savings until we know what we've got.
Right. If I may, excuse me, but the idea of not allowing weighted credit, our kids are already, as we've had the president of San Diego State explain to us, our kids are already somewhat at a disadvantage. And if it means that a kid from Poway has a 4.2 and our kid has a 4.0, and you're at a university that strictly looks at GPA and SAT scores, the kid from Poway, sorry Poway, I don't mean to use you as an example here, but it means that kid is going to get in over our student even though they've taken the exact same class, and I think that's a shame, and it's not really making our kids regionally college competitive, and it's cutting off their opportunities. I move to table this for staff review. May I have a second?
Dr. Evans.
Yes, I think from what I'm hearing, first of all, we did make a budget decision in terms of not being able to we do not have the funds to pay for this. And it seems what we're discussing is finding what alternatives are there in terms of dealing with this issue of weighted credit or not weighted credit or the legal issue of 2 years ago doing it the way we were doing it just because we'd always done it that way and what other alternatives there are. So it seems like we do have some time to work on how to accommodate this. It's just that we can't turn back on the budget issue at this point.
I've got a couple of questions. So one, and I don't know, the superintendent or if Nellie wanted to address it on this issue of what are we doing about IB, and are we now making a distinction between AP and IB?
IB was coupled into this payment, so AP and IB were put in together, but so it's operating under, the suggestion is that it operates under the way that it was formerly done as well.
But so the budget decision, that we've talked about also requires families to pay for the IB test?
Correct.
Okay. And then I guess I'm following Dr. Evans' thinking, but I guess the question is for Mr. Brzee. Can we vote tonight as part of our budget solutions for the second interim the savings from requiring families to pay for the AP test without having resolved this issue first?
Yes, I think you can.
Okay. So we've got basically, do we need a motion to table?
But wait a minute.
Already did. Seconded.
I still like to understand this. How can you have a policy where you have already made a decision you're not going to pay for the tests and then bring it back with any fair recommendations? I mean, you either say we're saving the money, we don't care, or you have a policy wrapped around the fact that you're saving the money. But the policy that's coming back, if I'm hearing right, is going to have to say, well, here's our policy, but we're not paying for the tests. Okay, so it's not the same as our previous position, and it also is creating some kind of issues over equity.
Well, I guess, Mr. Brzee, could you elaborate on why you think we'd be able to include this in savings tonight, having not yet passed the policy before?
I would say generally there are a number of decisions that you made at your previous meeting where in order to fully implement those decisions and do any other prerequisites that are required by law, you have to take future actions. And I don't think, I think the presumption is in your budget cutting decisions that that those actions will be taken in order to be able to implement them when you adopt the budget in June.
Okay, so we've got a motion and a second to table this issue. Please vote. Okay, so we'll come back to that. Okay, so item GO3, Nellie, the Johnson Science, Technology, Engineering, and Mathematics Magnet School grade reconfiguration.
What is this now? We're back to
Johnson.
The item before you is the reconfiguration of Johnson from a K6 to a K5. I'd like to introduce the School Improvement Officer, Rupi Boyd, who oversees Johnson.
Good afternoon. I was going to say good morning. Good afternoon, Board President and the Superintendent Koba. The decision to reconfigure Johnson Elementary came about due to their sixth graders not being able to participate at MTM, which is Millennium Magnet School. And the staff really talked about it, so we had to give parents the option to either go to Millennial as from fifth grade into sixth grade, or wait and take their chances to maybe not have a slot as a sixth grader going in as a seventh grader. So the staff, along with the community, decided they wanted to go ahead and reconfigure the school to K5, knowing they wanted to make sure the kids had the options they wanted. We did 2 staff meetings and about 4 community meetings. Parents are still a little bit upset because of their current sixth graders not being able to enter Millennial Tech as seventh graders. Millennial only has about 10 spots, and there's about 26 students that want to attend. I know the school options program is really working with the parents to make sure they get access, and we're going to also work with the fifth graders who do not want to go on to Millennial Tech to find homes for them as to wherever their choices may be.
We get our motion.
Move approval.
Second.
Okay, any further?
Yeah, I just would like more clarification from the superintendent on how, I know this is not as big as a K-8 reconfiguration, but just what effects this has on the whole puzzle of the district.
Well, I think what we're responding to is some staff and community interest in trying to operate and focus on a K-5 rather than a K-6. And also, Johnson is a STEM, science and technology school. They were in the Lincoln cluster, and we were trying to sort out how to accommodate that community parent interest in reconfiguring how to move the sixth graders. And after consultation, we see one of the feeder patterns would be into Millennial Tech, which is a district-wide science and math middle school, to accept this as a feeder pattern. So I think after the consultation, we agreed that we could accept a certain capacity at Millennial Tech, and they're still working on that. About 41% of the cluster comes into Millennial Tech, and the balance from the district-wide magnet feeding program.
So if this would take place effect next year,
in September,
it means that the 5th and 6th graders would potentially be going over to Millennial.
The rising 5th graders going into 6th grade. The rising 5th graders going into 6th grade.
And the 6th graders, some of them are trying to, but there won't be space for all of them.
Right, and only the ones that are interested. So it's not an automatic. So if they're interested in other middle schools, we'll work with them to take them there.
Okay, please vote. Okay, great. Okay, let's move on to item HO1, our second interim financial report. Mr. Koba.
Okay. I'm going to turn it over to our Chief Financial Officer, Mr. Macias.
Okay.
Good evening. I'm going to, Bill asked if I'd join the dais real quick because I'm going to introduce 3 of the players that helped put this together for us.
I'm going to move approval of this item.
Okay, we've got a motion to approve.
Second.
Okay.
This is no discussion.
Just a point of order. How can you approve a financial report when you haven't approved the budget formally approve the budget premises on which it's based.
Do you want to address the point of order, Mr. Kova or Mr. Brzee?
Is it a one-shot deal? You vote for the interim report and the budget solutions?
It's my understanding. Is that correct?
Then that's not what the motion says, or does it?
Yes.
No, it doesn't.
Can we, Mr. Brzee, could you address this?
I'm sorry, I don't understand what the question is.
Can I ask it? Because I'm the one who raised it.
Yeah.
All right, this says, and it was moved and to be approved. We approve the fiscal year interim report and certify the district will be able to meet its financial obligations for the current fiscal year and 2 subsequent fiscal years. That's a positive certification. But within the interim report are a whole bunch of budgetary assumptions that we have not passed. Therefore, I find it difficult for us to vote on the interim report and its certifications when the actual decisions on the budget items, the ratification of the actual budget decisions has not yet been made. We have, it is here, I thought, we had a series of in fact, I got a whole pile of it, and some of these assumptions are budgetary assumptions, which I don't think we formally passed. We've agreed to them, perhaps, but I, maybe in closed session, but I don't think they were brought down for ratification. And it would include things like closing programs or not.
I think the adoption...
And are all those programs closed and these people wasting their time?
The adoption of an interim report includes with it, and James can comment if he has any perspective on the county office's point of view on this, but the adoption of an interim report includes a plan for not only current year but future year meeting financial obligations, and I think adopting the report incorporates those plans. They don't have to be finalized decisions.
Okay,
similar to my last answer.
So if we vote on this, then all those budget solutions are a done deal.
So from my perspective, Mr. DeBeck, if you'd like, second interim is doing a couple things. One is certifying that we can meet our obligations with the positive certification.
That's not what I said.
But I'm getting to your answer if you just give me a second, please. Second interim requires us to report July 1 through January 31st actuals, year-to-date. How much money have we spent through January 31st? And then from February to essentially June 30th, we put a projection out there, and based on that, we have confirmed the numbers and said we're balanced. So the second interim is really concentrating on current year activities. In conjunction with that, based on a CDE, California Ed Code, they require us to give 2 multi-year projections. The multi-year projections would be 10-11 and 11-12. Now, when we get into June budget adoption, that's a different. June budget adoption is essentially saying for the 10-11 budget year, you can balance your budget. And at that point in time, you would have the prerogative, if needed, to adjust any of the issues or the items that you might have made available in the second interim. That's the board prerogative. But Ed Code in the county office, they're not going to prescribe and say, well, what do you mean? You said these 25 items, why are you changing them? That's the board prerogative based on priorities and those kinds of things. So from tonight's perspective, we're trying to do one thing, and that is approve the second interim as it stands, July through January, end of January, approve the projections through June 30th, and then confirm our multi-year projections. And in those multi-year projections, Mr. DeBeck, we do have the items that you voted on last week at the last board workshop, and that included essentially the list of items that were on the board that you folks had voted on.
Yeah, so that basically what that is that saying that we have those budget solutions that we're going to exercise in order to show the balanced budget for the 11-12 and 12-13.
Yes, sir. 9-10, 11-12, and 12-13.
So then they're done deals.
I disagree. And the reason I disagree respectfully is that when it comes to June budget adoption, May Revise could change revenue for us. And based on May Revise, maybe we get more revenue. I don't know. But that could essentially make you adjust the items that you've taken action on as of last week.
Coburn.
Okay, fair enough.
And just one more comment on that. We are expected by the county superintendent to
I'm
provide
aware of that.
with the second interim a
I'm not
proposed
agreeing
strategy.
with that at all. I'm saying the assumptions may be flawed.
Okay, so why don't we proceed with
Okay, sure. I'd like to just kind of quickly bring up three people so you kind of put a face to the name. Amy Shackelford is our Director of Financial Services. With her will be Ro Pauley, our Director of Financial Support Services, and Jenny Selkeld, our Controller. And we all have kind of a combination of pieces that we've done here. So what I really want to do is make sure that you see the people there, and now we start to realize that we've got the finance team pretty much settled as far as resources and going forward. And I'm trying to get myself out of a job here by hiring these very talented women here to take over what I do, and maybe at some point you won't need me.
Somehow there seems to be enough work.
I agree. So what I'd like to do is just kind of walk you through the PowerPoint presentation, and also to let you know that we've included, we're trying to get better as much as we can. We're pretty good students. So when you look at the SACS report, which is this really thick document, that's actually the standardized accounting form that we get from the state of California. And in the documentation is really a lot of good information that shows you things about your revenue, how much are our salaries and expenses, those kinds of things. But I don't want to go through every page, although we are prepared to answer questions on every page if we need to. We've also included a table of contents, and even though we hand scribbled in some areas, you have page numbers of the document as well. But what I'd like to do is just concentrate on the PowerPoint, and then these ladies are going to help us with any questions that we might have, including myself. So we've debated quite a bit as far as the certification, and you can positive certify, you can qualify with a negative, but they all have consequences to them. And based on the financial conditions as I see them right now, I'm going to recommend positive certification. But that means many things, and one is as we're moving tighter fiscal controls, the rest of this year and next year we're going to have to increase and really put the controls on. For example, if we look at centralized procurement, we've encumbered about $215 million of contracts and related expenses that traditionally in years prior we had never encumbered that much. So what we've done between July 1 and today's date, we actually have a really good idea of how many items have we encumbered and specifically which departments those are for. So the team, and myself included, Superintendent Koba, you can speak for yourself, but I'm recommending a positive certification. A couple things to do is we're going to show you some three summary schedules, and the first schedule is really the multi-year projection, which is total general fund. Okay. What we're really concentrating our effort on is essentially the total general fund unrestricted. So when you look at slide 3, that includes all of our unrestricted and our restricted monies. We've been concentrating on our unrestricted, at the same time managing restricted because we've got to keep that in balance as well. So the key points from my perspective here would be, if you look at 2009-10 column 3, and you go to row 5, which is the ending balance, we're projecting an ending balance of about $45.5 million. When you take our economic uncertainties in the accounting stores, that's how we get to the 25.4, which is column 3, row 12. So we have an ending balance projected of 45.5. We essentially have to account for about $23 million economic uncertainty, 1.6 and 0.8 and 57,000 for our revolving cash and accounting entries. That's about 25.4. Our surplus at the end of this fiscal year is $20.1 million. And we've done a lot of things to essentially ensure that that happens. I think Mr. Koba sent out an email to you a couple days ago, or maybe late Friday, talking about we're going to continue, we're going to move into an exemption approval process. So before, what we had done is we said we're going to take 3% and 2.5%. That worked, that's helped us. But now we're doing, for the rest of the years, we're actually going to do an exemption process where pretty much every expenditure has to come across the chief officer's desk and the finance officer's desk to make sure we can meet that $20.1 million number. That's how tight the number is. From my perspective, once we get into 10-11, we really have to look at a couple things, and that's why I say we're getting down to the skeleton, and we're kind of hitting the bone marrow almost. If you look at column 4, row 5, that's the ending balance of $25.5 million. The issue we have, though, is 24.7, which is row 12, column 4. That takes up the large portion of my 25. So when I get to the end of the fiscal year for 10-11, we're projecting a general fund unrestricted surplus of only $724,000. That's as tight as I've looked back before to see how tight we've been. And Bill, you can fix me here if I'm wrong. That's as tight as we've ever been. And so, from my perspective, 10-11, you really have to manage tightly, and it's almost going to be an exemption process in 10-11 as well, as far as people wanting to spend money. Now, 11-12, what we've done is we incorporate all the adjustments you made, which are in this presentation, and the same thing. We get to an ending balance of about 24.3, cover all my accounting stores, cover my economic uncertainty, and we're down to about $785,000. Same conversation between 10-11, 11-12. Really, really tight. It's really tight. And I'm going to move through the presentation, and then I'll come back to questions. This is our general fund restricted multi-year projection. The restricted side of the house is a little bit healthier than our unrestricted, and that would be our Title I dollars. That would be Tier 1, Tier 2, a bunch of different sources of money at the state, federal, and local level. Similar problem that when you get into 11-12, we're down to an ending balance of about $81,000. So not only are we impacting our general fund unrestricted, but we're hitting restricted as well. Major changes from first interim. Really, the revenue changes remained relatively the same. They haven't given us any more cuts or any more reductions. We do have the ending balance surplus. That's how we get to the positive 20 with the hiring freeze, the spending freeze, and the voluntary reductions. Also referenced to you last time that we got permission from the Department of Finance at the federal level of education that we could use the stabilization dollars to cover the CERT payment. So instead of using general fund unrestricted, we've actually matched that up against the state stabilization dollars that we got via the ARR legislation. So that's helped on our unrestricted side. These are the reductions that were approved during the last board workshop, and we had a balance of about 79.5 we had to fix. And when you get to the bottom of this sheet, that's just a sum total of 31.5. The next page adds more. So as requested, we put the dollar amount, what the reduction was, and how many certificated or classified FTE that this involved. When you get to the next page, which is page 8, we have about $79.5 million, includes 288 certificated FTE and about 129 classified FTE. And that's all the work we've done with Sandra Hueso and her HR team. They've really been helpful to us and instrumental in getting the right data for us so we can make sure we implement this and integrate it into the financial statements. The other thing we had to do is when you look at page 9, based on the fact that we still have some agreements that we're working our way through from an employee standpoint, we've had to include a backup plan. That backup plan is on page 9. So potential solutions included in the analysis. In the event we aren't able to capture everything, one of the directives I had gotten from Superintendent Koba was to try to put together somewhat of a backup plan to cover any of the items that we might have, that we might be able to take continued action on or further action on. The other thing that we're required to do from a second interim standpoint is give a report on our projected ending fund balances, and so that's a requirement that we have. So when you look through these funding sources, as you can see, those are our ending balance amounts as of June 30th. So in many of our areas, we still have some healthy balances, like in the County School Facilities Fund, the Building Fund of $10 million, Developer Fee Fund of $18.3. So the state of California requires us to report out on this. The fund picture you're looking at there is more than just the general fund, restricted and unrestricted. So in most of these other funds, it's very specific how you can spend the money. So it's not like we have, like the Bond Interest and Redemption Fund, I can't touch that. That's really paying back the taxpayers for Prop MM, so those dollars are not available to us. The Liability Insurance Fund, any issue that we have from an insurance standpoint, we have to pay it out of that fund. It's very specific. I can't use that to pay my salary, as an example. Superintendent Koba wanted me to kind of talk a little bit about what's going to happen in 12-13. And so slide 11 at a high level kind of talks about that. And I'm also working on a memo that's going to be sent to you folks early next week to kind of walk you through, once we approve the second interim, if you do, when we get into the next few budget years in 12-13, we're going to have a lot of cost increases or cost pressures. Remember, the flexibility that we've had, that goes away or expires. Categorical flexibility ends. We have our textbook flexibility expires. So in 12-13, there's a lot of cost pressures sitting with us at the school district. And just to name a few, we've got the usual step and column, which is the normal business operations that doesn't go away. That's around $15 million. We've also got health and welfare of about 12.6. We're using about an 8.36% cost factor. That information we got from VIBA George McGregor, so we're using that number to estimate that. We're also going to have utilities increase to about $2.4 million. Now, two key issues here is that our categorical flexibility, that will go away for us. And what that means is that we have Tiers 1 and Tiers 2 that are restricted. What traditionally has been Tier 1, 2, and 3. In Tier 3, we have almost $100 million of TIG resources that are being pushed and used by the general fund unrestricted. In 12-13, that flexibility goes away. We're projecting an impact to the general fund unrestricted of about $7 million. So once we push everything back on the restricted side, there's going to be a gap in unrestricted of about $7 million. Now, the big item for us is, and I know there's a lot of different things that are going to take place here. The textbook flexibility expires. Debbie Foster and I worked with the textbook team, the IMFRP team, and said, today, if they were to tell us, you've got to adopt the textbooks, which ones would they be? So we would have K-8 history, social science, in any of the minimum requirements from previous years that we skipped on because of flexibility. If we were to go with just that dollar amount, that's about $21.5 million. But based on the research that we've been doing, we think there's going to be a grace period of about 24 months. So from a revenue perspective and my own perspective as a CFO, I don't see how they could come back to us and say, you got to cut a check for $21.5 million. They've helped create this problem for us. So my hope is that the grace period will take effect, and that'll be over about 24 months, so we'll have a bit of time to kind of catch up to what's going to be required. So I'm really kind of hoping on that piece there. Now, I know you've quickly have gone through. I've quickly gone through the slides for you, but what I'd like to do now is ask Amy Shackelford to essentially, Amy and Jenny, to walk us through a little bit on the revenue slides. And Amy, you tell me what slide you'd like me to hit first. Page 3? Page 3? Okay. Let's go ahead and walk them through how some of our assumptions have changed and what the reason has been behind it.
If you look at line item number 1 and the change between the budget, which is column 2, and column 3, that's been a result of the governor's May revised projected deficit factor for 2008 and 9, which was reduced from 11.428% to 7.844%. So that's reflected in that amount. At the same time, at line number 2 for revenues, you see a decrease as well, and that's from that funding that they gave. The state also took it away, reducing the ADA amount for revenue limit.
Thank you, Jenny. So what's happening, if you remember, between now the first interim and the second interim is, remember they gave us additional dollars last year of about $27 million. And then this year for 9-10, they took it away by charging us an ADA reduction of $252.83. So that's why you see the big swing in the beginning balance from the budget adoption and also from the 9-10 projection. So part of that big swing dealt with the fact that they gave us the money. We couldn't spend it in 25 days, and so that dropped to our ending balance and moved into our beginning balance on that side. I think, from my perspective, more importantly, are the expenditure sides, because we've held pretty true on our revenue, our beginning balance and revenues, and so we projected a $1.19 million. But Amy, can you give them the number that we reported to them on first interim, so they can see the comparison between first interim and the 9-10 number of 1.128, which is column 3, row 3? Do you have that sheet?
Sorry, I have the unrestricted side.
Well, we can go to unrestricted.
Want to go to the next slide?
Sure, we can go to unrestricted.
If you want to look at a budget adoption on column 2 and compare...
We've moved to page 4, and we're showing total general fund unrestricted.
So at budget adoption, we had projected expenditures of $676 million. At second interim, we're at about $679 million. As you may recall, back at first interim, we were at about $681 million of expenditures. What we've done since budget adoption is we had an initial uptick of expenditures because at the time of budget adoption, a lot of the ARA dollars, we didn't have spend plans, and so they weren't itemized in the expenditure line. So we've had a couple of increases because of the ARA dollar spend plans that we've been implementing and spending. And in addition, we've had some downticks with all of the spend freeze, the hiring freeze, and the voluntary reductions. And so we're at about $679 million right now.
Excuse me for a second. So a couple things happen. When we book the revenue for the ARA dollars, depending on how much we're able to book, I can't tie an expense to that specific item. So what ends up happening on the program side is that Debbie Foster and team will work with the people that kind of own the programmatic items for the ARA revenue, and they'll build the expense plans for the rest of the year so the revenue matches the expense.
I got a problem, and maybe I'm dumb. Okay, I'm looking at this. I think it's the same sheet. The ending balance for 29 and 10 on line 5 is $39 million, and the beginning balance for 209-10 was $98 million.
Yeah, what this is, Mr. DeBeck.
Then I mean, don't the ending balance, aren't they supposed to match up with the beginning balances?
No, Mr. DeBeck, what you're looking at is June budget adoption, of which June budget adoption between now and then has been several months. Okay. We've also provided a first...
Okay, so then let's go to the projection line and, and use that. 45, you carried up the 45 up to this next line, okay, and then you end up with 25 and you carried it up. So that's okay.
Yep.
The difference between the columns is the budget line doesn't show any relationship to the actual projection.
I think one of the pieces that you don't see on here is the reason why our beginning balance for the 09-10 projection is significantly higher than what the ending balance was at budget adoption is because we got all those revenues after we adopted the budget. So the state came along and said, okay, here's $22 million, and so that fell to our ending balance because it was after we had adopted the budget, and then it was also... with all of the Tier 3 sweeping, we did that at unaudited actuals, and so unfortunately you're missing that little step.
Okay, so your budget didn't anticipate revenue that you got that was one-time revenue.
Right, and then it didn't
okay, so
unaudited actuals.
But then when you go to your projection for the following year, you don't project any revenue because you don't know anything about it.
Correct.
That's okay. Well, I understand the difference, but, so then the question is, our projection for 29-10 is also equivalent to our budget?
Because we don't know any...
It will be now that we've essentially made all essentially the cuts and the reductions. So remember, one of the goals that we had as the finance team in the entire district was how much savings can we have this year so we can drop to the ending balance. That's why you see the surplus amount of 20.1. In reality, we have a $45 million ending balance for 2009-10.
Okay, so the aberration really is the fact that the beginning balance for 29 and 10 is accelerated because of unanticipated revenue.
It's all the actions that take place after
and so then if
adoption.
we looked at the actual trend of our budgets versus the projections, that the 54 declines to 45 and then the 45 declines to 25, and then we have a trend line that would show a declining beginning balance.
Yes, that's why you see column 4, row 1, 45, and column 5, row 1, 25.
All right.
That's essentially the trend line of declining.
Mm-hmm. I'm done.
Yeah, I guess for my last, unless there's other questions that you want to have answered, talk with Bill a lot about this at detail. And Bill, if I'm incorrect, please correct me. But the goal for us, we got to hit the 20.1 million. That's not a debate. We just have to hit that number. Anything above that number is going to change columns 4 and 5, rows 13. And we're literally at less than $1 million when we get to the surplus portion of what's left in the general fund unrestricted balance. And so that's why I say it's critically important that we've got to make sure we hit the $20.1 million this year. And I think it's doable. It's going to be painful, but I think it's doable. So, like the support you've always given us, we just have to make sure we action on that from an operational perspective.
Questions? I've got one question before the speaker. I just want to go to...
Which page, Mr. Rare?
Page 7.
Yeah. I think I know the question you're going to ask.
Okay. It's a good solution. So it's at line 23. Special ed programs and services, we're projecting a $9 million savings there. That $9 million savings, this is a discussion that we've been having a lot.
Sure.
Is a savings from the projected increase in our general fund contribution.
That's correct.
It's not a cut in services.
That's correct. Yes, sir.
So my question then would be, why are we projecting FTE reductions of 24 certificated and 100?
Cheryl, there you go.
102 is that was the number at the time that we had the budget workshop. Joe and his team have been working on operationalizing the $9 million, so the 102 has gone down some. The latest number I have is 80, but I think they're still refining that number.
I guess the question is, why would there be any FTE reductions?
Yeah, they're asking about any FTE reductions.
On either side, on certificated or classified, because we're saying we're not cutting services from current year, we're simply decreasing the projected increase.
He's looking restless.
Come on up, Joe, if you want. Yeah.
He's looking restless.
And just so you know, I had Amy and Dr. Fulcher. I just got them just an arm wrestling match versus a full-blown wrestling match.
I think it's been a little more than just an arm wrestling match, James, but thanks.
This is the $9 million man.
I am the $9 million man, and it's growing by the minute. A very good question. As a matter of fact, and I mentioned this earlier, I think we could maintain the current staff levels and still hit those targeted amounts that the board has put before us. It's going to depend on two things, and I've talked with Amy and the team about these two items. One, I know we'll recapture some of the money for our non-public school students. We had a big issue about coding. That's been resolved. We're going to recapture some of the ADA for those kids, non-public schools and special day class students as well. The other issue has more to do with the Medi-Cal reimbursements. There's still some healthy discussion between my department and finance about what to do with those revenues, that reimbursement that comes back for the Medi-Cal monies that we typically get.
But the question that we're scratching our head, been through this several times, we don't understand why there's even any FTEs. If we're saying we're maintaining, this was that $13 million that was there, and we were saying $15 million. Why, if we want to maintain special ed, it's $15 million? We identified the $6 million as step and column. We're okay with that. But if this is coming at additional monies, that's additional money. So why is there any staff even involved?
Yeah, what I said initially is that I think we can. I'm pretty certain that we can maintain our current staffing levels for this year without affecting the vacancies. If the two items that I mentioned earlier are done, are completed, so it would mean no vacancies are offered up. But we're certainly not cutting anything from the special ed department. And I think initially what we did when we had the initial PBB discussion is that we offered 75 vacancies, paraeducator vacancies, and also 5 certificated vacancies. The number, for some reason, is inflated here, and I think I know how it happened. And the board, of course, decided not to move on the Learning Center, and there were 5 school psychologist positions that had been offered up as well. But with everything we've done over the course of the last week, again, I think those vacancies can be salvaged. We won't need to move forward with unfilling those.
So from my perspective, then I think, does that mean then that we can take away the 102 and the 24 on the certificated line and the classified line, Amy? That's really the discussion.
And I'm also wondering, just to clarify that, if we're not filling vacancies, which means we're not going up, then in a sense, is that a reduction of FTEs or not?
Yeah, so I haven't looked at the vacant report. To see
there's vacancies there, and we're not going to fill them next year. Does that mean that the FTE goes down or stays the same?
Well, we did an analysis of the current vacancies. We took a look at those that were pending, those that were filled with hourly positions. Some had subs. We took a look at all that over the course of this past week. It looks like there would be about a difference of 35 vacancies that we needed to have the board and of course our teams consider. So we would need to, if we were offering up any of those vacancies, it would be 35. The others are filled at this point based on an analysis of those vacancies.
Right, so not deciding to not fill a vacancy actually lowers the FTE. It just doesn't remove anybody from their job. Right.
Okay, so it seems to me, and Superintendent, what's your recommendation, that we'd probably want to zero out that 24 and 102 and that line on it based on what Joe Fulcher is saying.
Okay,
I'd like to get a sense from.
I know what you're getting at, but I think the same topic needs to be explored. So basically, what we got is $9 million in unfilled positions and instructional supplies that we could save. Then why are we at budget this year? If they are already in that place, then why didn't we have that contributing to a higher ending balance? You know, if, for example, the existing situation is one that you can say, everything we're doing is going to keep going and we're going to save $9 million, then how come we didn't save the $9 million this year? Well, I mean, it's like you're saying we're going to roll over all this stuff and into the next year. And as a result of doing everything we're doing now, we'll be able to save $9 million. So then, if that's the case, how did it happen that this year we spent the $9 million?
We didn't.
No offense, Mr. Then we have that. Then we basically saved $9 million this year on special.
We're reducing our increase.
Yeah, what we're saving is $9 million from what had been a projected increase of $15 million for next year.
Right. We went from a general fund unrestricted contribution of 115 that was projected.
Yes.
And we have dropped that projection on the unrestricted contribution side.
Yeah.
So that's the savings piece. And the reason why it's savings in my mind is that now the general fund unrestricted, I don't have to give those dollars to special education.
Yeah.
No, because special ed is now paying for it out of their allocation from the feds?
Not fully. No, sir.
Well, it's pretty hard to follow this if you've got a number like that as a savings and it isn't covered by a transfer.
Well, it's a savings because I don't have to take revenue limit resources from 1011 and move it to the general fund unrestricted contribution to special education.
What part of that $9 million reduced contribution is because of the tagging of the kids? We did do analysis between Encore and Zangle, and there was, what was it, Joe, about 500?
So the restricted is
500 kids that dropped, and so there would be an uptick of revenue next year of about $2.5 million, and so that's part of what gets us down the $9 million in the forecast.
Okay, so again, I just think the basic point here is we're not cutting services. Therefore, I think those cuts in FTE, the 24 and the 102, should be zeroed out. That's what I'm hearing is correct.
We can count on the ADA recapture for the non-public school students.
Yeah.
Right.
And then the other option, again, would be the Medi-Cal monies that we have to resolve. I think there's about 1.6 to 2 million that could go back into the special ed budget.
That's income. It should be budgeted as income.
Well,
yes, it's
not
On the
savings.
unrestricted side, that's the conundrum, is that it's helping on one side, so if you move it over there, it reduces the unrestricted contribution, so it would just be broken out differently but it is services that's 100% provided by special ed.
But along with what Mr. Barrera is saying, I think rather than 0 on the certificate FTE and classified, it seems like we still would have to have the number there of vacant positions that we're deciding to eliminate. Correct? I mean, that would still be, there would be some reduction of FTEs, or not?
Not necessarily. There doesn't have to be any reductions of
Right,
FTE.
we said we're going to maintain special ed.
No, but I'm talking about not. But we're talking about not filling vacancies.
We're talking about filled positions. Right. There's not an elimination or a reduction of filled positions.
Well, there's two actions you can take with vacancies. You either freeze them for a period of time, which then you fill them once the economy improves, or you eliminate, which means it's a permanent reduction of FTE.
The reason why maybe I'll speak for me, get confused is because very simple. Our very simple thing was we wanted to maintain special ed. Now, you, the staff, said that to maintain special ed, that meant you weren't changing any positions, you were maintaining what we have right now. And in order to do that, it would be an additional $15 million next year. And we scratched our heads then and said, why is it another $15 million just to maintain the same thing that we're doing this year? That was why we was so, kind of confused. So now we understood when you said, okay, $6 million of that was for step and column. Yep. What we didn't understand was, again, the $9 million. But we said, okay, we'll save that $9 million. But what we hear you saying to us, what we're seeing on the paper now, is that means some cuts. And we're saying we didn't want to cut special ed. But so we're confused as to why there's any numbers here, because if we say maintain, that means what? Maintain. That didn't mean lay off any people, get rid of any people. It meant keep it the same. So we're confused as to why you have the numbers. But you know what? I think yes.
I can understand your confusion. This has been a very long, drawn-out process. Yeah. And again, I think what I said at the very beginning of this holds true. That we can manage to meet the targeted goal and maintain the current staffing levels. We had two items that, again, we need to consider. One, I think, has been certainly handled already and taken care of with the non-public school funding. The other is the Medi-Cal monies. So I'm fairly certain that we can resolve that and maintain the current staffing levels.
Okay. And then from a finance perspective, and Amy, I think that's true as well, Joe, from everything that we've talked about as a team. So from my perspective, I understand the frustration of the board showing essentially the 24 and the 102, and that could have just been how late you were here last night.
Yeah, no one understands. So that's one point. And then the second question, though, that what Dr. Evans is raising is it seems like we need another column here or some clarification when we talk about these FTE reductions total and all of the line items. If we're distinguishing between actual, people who are filling positions today versus vacancies that we just wouldn't fill, it would be good to know. So if the final, I think on the next page it was
129.
Yeah, 288 certificated and 129 classified. I guess the question is, are any of those numbers, 288 or 129, simply not filling vacant positions? And how many of them are, cutting positions that are currently filled?
Yeah, I can't speak on the certificated side for just a second, but I know we can go through both sides and find out.
Okay.
Of the 288, is there a vacant position we don't fill?
Yeah.
And of the 129, the same thing.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, we can do that. Probably next day.
Because one of the points was that a reduction in FTE is not necessarily a layoff.
That's correct.
And with what Ms. Jackson was saying, I just want to say that if when we're maintaining services, if we've gone for a year and maintained good services with several positions vacant, then to not fill those positions is not reducing our services. It's just doing what we've already been doing.
Yeah. So the action for President Barrera, the action that I hear for us, the finance team, is to help Joe solve the two items on the revenue piece and the Medi-Cal detail, and the other is look at the certificate and classified pieces and find out of the 288 are there real bodies in there, a real person that's in that FTE, and also the 129. How do we clean up the 24?
Yes.
And the 102.
And the 102. Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. We can take that for an action.
Okay. Thanks.
So the really only good way to get a picture of special ed would be to have a special ed budget that shows an income from two sources, one from federal support and the other is from general ed support, and then to show a regular budget showing the actual number of employees and the cost of the programs that they had each year. That way, when we look at special ed, we don't get into this mixing money stuff, and we'd have a clear program budget to look at.
That's a great recommendation, Mr. DeBeck. Right. We'll put a schedule like that for you together.
I agree.
Okay, we've got 3 speakers. Sorry, before we vote. Angela Swift, Mary Lou Finley, and Doug Porter. Thank you, finance team, by the way, and thank you, Joe. Yeah. Thanks.
Hi, my name is Angela Swift, and I'm representing the Student Learning Center. I think I drew the short straw here. But we've prepared a packet for you. I certainly want to make sure that we represent ourselves and the kind of program that we provide. You have a profile of the students that we serve. You have some test data that shows the improvement that our students make. You also have a screening informal assessment to give you an idea of the very good work that we do. And I definitely have a sense that, I would like you to know about our Learning Center. I'd certainly invite everybody to come and visit and see the kind of quality work that we do. But as I sat through this long meeting, I go, this is really about the budget. And I hear you saying that you're trying to preserve special ed and the funding. And, we have signs that say, Save the Learning Center. But if I just move the word around, it's really that we believe that the Learning Center saves you. That the Learning Center was started because of the expenditures for free and appropriate education, that we had to go to non-public agencies to teach to parents, my child can't read. The IEP has not been implemented. I'm bringing my advocate, I'm bringing my attorney. If you can't teach my child to read, you can pay for someone else to do it. And very wisely, the district said, you know what, we can do this. And you have for 10 years. And I guess I would ask legal and I would ask budget, really, what is the savings to the district? What were the expenditures before the Learning Center when you had to pay for busing to private agencies, non-public schools? We have over 60 referrals to the Learning Center this year. Legal has had 100 cases that have gone to mediation. Having the Learning Center is a huge bonus for the district. Parents are rightfully distraught that their child can't read. What can the district do? You've done regular ed, you've done special ed. What else can you do? We can do the Learning Center. They have an excellent program. And we look at those numbers. We teach kids to read. So, I understand about the budget. We're very good teachers. We teach the kids to read. Did you really want to pay the lawyers and the transportation to send them to a private school? I think that's really what the bottom line comes to. So we're here saying that we're doing a good job for you. We appreciate everything you do to support us, and we ask that you continue it. I love OSILE, but nobody's going to sue you if the child doesn't go to Balboa Park.
Okay.
So where's the cut of your program in this budget?
It's not in there. We did not cut.
Not there. Yeah. Okay, that's fine.
And we hope it can stay there. And we appreciate all your work.
Thanks. Mary Lou Finley or Doug Porter? Doug, yeah.
Good evening. My name is Doug Porter, and I have a daughter who attends the School for Creative and Performing Arts. Well, there you have it, sports fans. You got another budget up there. maybe I should say it's a wannabe budget because we all know it's going to change. And Mr. DeBeck's been pretty good about pointing that out. I'd like to say that it incorporates 1,000 little cuts on the body of public education in San Diego. I give you some credit for trying to minimize the pain, but let's face facts. This budget doesn't make anybody happy. And it doesn't address the revenue shortfalls that you're facing for next year. It's been painful for those of us who support a quality public education to watch this process. The various parent groups come up, they're fighting for their programs. Some people come in and blame the teachers and the union. Some people come in and blame the administration and the school board. And as long as we're all squabbling amongst ourselves, nothing's going to change. Nobody's really pointing the finger where it belongs to be pointed, at the state legislature. For those of you that think that we are powerless to influence what goes on up there, I say think again. I can guarantee you that if enough of us in San Diego stand up and make our voices heard, funding for education can be found. I represent a group called Educate for the Future. Our mission is to promote excellence in public education, and we call upon all the groups involved with education, parents, students, teachers, and administrators, to join with us and speak with one voice, to say to Sacramento, no more cuts in education. This spring, we'll be rolling out a blue ribbon campaign. We ask people to put on blue ribbons, to decorate their homes and their schools with blue ribbons to show that they support quality public education. We are proposing a public rally and parade on May 8th in Balboa Park to send a message to Sacramento. Different groups may have different ideas about where public education needs to go, but for now, we think the focus really needs to be saving our schools from devastation. Again, students, parents, teachers, and administrators need to work on this together. I'm asking the board this evening to consider joining us on May 8th and endorsing our rally. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Doug. Okay, so we've got a motion and a second to approve the second interim report. All in favor?
Yeah, I'd like to just at least make some comments. I'm going to be voting against this. We have seen over $300 million worth of cuts over the last 3 years, and according to the superintendent's speech the other day. And, we have again and again turned away the opportunity to balance the budget responsibly. And, I've said before, a stitch in time saves nine. We've taken increases to our employees' salaries that we didn't know where the money was coming from. We've taken schools that we had agreed to close and had them reopened again. We have taken employees back that we had painfully let go, and now we are here at this point in time, which I've looked at a lot of budgets of a lot of organizations over many years, and this is essentially equivalent. It's $1 billion plus corporation, and I'm not going to do the complicated math, but it's equivalent. When I look at the third year for 2011, the general fund restricted multi-year projection, we've got an $81,000 ending balance, which is the equivalent of $1 million organization at the end of the year, having $81 in the till, and they're restricted. I can't support this. We have had an earthquake in California, across the United States, and we have had, I think, earthquakes in Haiti and in Chile recently, and we can expect nothing but uncertainty right now. I think we've painted ourselves into a corner, and worse than that, with my training as an attorney, you are allowed to rely on the opinion of your staff if, under the business judgment rule, you believe that they're exhibiting the qualifications and the behavior that you can rely on. I've seen this staff pushed to its limits. They're exhausted, they're tired, they're meeting on Friday night until late, they're meeting on Saturdays and Sundays, and I think that they would at this point do anything to please a compassionate Board of Education that wants to save jobs and wants to do the right thing. But I don't really believe that these numbers represent the most prudent, responsible counsel that could be given to a Board of Education facing the types of very evident crises that we have in the economy of California and the potential crises that we have should we have a real earthquake in California. So I think we have other things we could have done. We could have voted to go on to impasse with our labor unions and found an arbitrator that we could have negotiated better salary reductions. I'm sorry we couldn't have found that. I think we could have made other decisions earlier. I think we have turned away opportunity after opportunity, and I don't feel comfortable submitting this to the state of California and saying that this is a true and honest assessment, in my opinion, that we will be able to balance our budget in this year or the coming years. The economy may increase. We may have some other things that will happen, but what I'm seeing right now, I don't have confidence in this report, and I don't have confidence, complete confidence, utter confidence. I have hope that we'll be able to balance that, but this report requires more than hope. It requires an assessment, a professional assessment, and I don't believe that we have that. It's been too much of a struggle. Just the conversation on special education alone does not really reflect what I think is professional business judgment in how this budget should be represented to the state of California and the taxpayers of San Diego. So thank you for hearing me out.
I just want to comment. I certainly agree that there are a lot of ugly things about this budget, but I think it is the result of us being willing to really stare reality in the eyes and make some really hard decisions. One reality is that we have to, because of the unstable funding, educational funding system in California, is we have to budget our schools 1 year at a time. And so therefore you see these very bad numbers for the second and third years outlying because we don't even know what the revenues will be at that point. But we are not going to say that for next year, for kids who are only going to be in kindergarten 1 year, or for next year, kids who are only going to be seniors for 1 year, that we are going to set aside some of that money for future years when we need to educate those kids right now. So I'm always open to looking at alternatives of other ways of doing things. I think what we have done is asked for shared sacrifice from everyone, which means that the teachers have sacrificed, the parents have sacrificed, the students are sacrificing, the community is sacrificing, and the reality is, and it's very true, we are up against the wall. We are solving this for next year. There are no more places that we're going to be able to look for cutting, and we're really going to have a major problem, a major social problem in California if we don't correct this in the coming months and come up with a more permanent solution for funding education in California. And the reality is, yes, we could squabble among ourselves about particular things, and I do applaud Ms. Nakamura for going to Sacramento with the PTA and others and working to really address the issue that we need to do something about public education funding in California. If we don't do that, we're not going to be able to continue on. It's just not going to work.
And I guess the only thing that I would add to that, I agree with Dr. Evans.
Your time's up.
My time's up. Is I respectfully disagree, Ms. Nakamura, with the idea that what staff is presenting to us is anything other than a professional analysis and an honest analysis. And yeah, the staff is tired, and yeah, the staff has worked night and day, weekend, but they've done that in order to turn over every rock that we could possibly look at, as they did last year, in order for us to pass a budget and move forward into the next school year where we're not doing things that are irresponsible that would affect kids. It's irresponsible to pass a budget and make cuts that affect kids in a real way without going through the painful and difficult analysis that our staff has gone through again. And there's no doubt in my mind that what they're recommending to us is something that they, in their professional opinion, based on rigorous and clear analysis, that they're defending and bringing to us. So we're voting on a recommendation coming forward from a staff with an incredibly high degree of integrity that's done an incredible amount of work to help us get through this once again. We're going to have another difficult year again in 2011-12. We know it's coming. We know we have to prepare for that. The key to preparing for that is, again, I think the advocacy work that all of us together can do to push back on further cuts from the state. But the work that the staff has done, I'm proud of, and I thank Superintendent Koba and I thank the staff for once again bringing to us options that protect our students and allow our students to have a school year in 10-11 that they can have a decent experience when what we're facing from the state is indecent. So I just want to thank the staff.
Please.
Yeah.
Okay, wait a minute.
Yeah, Mr. DeBeck?
Yeah, well, I don't disagree that the staff has done what they've been told. I disagree with some of the assumptions. I personally don't like the idea of using proceeds of property sales as income. I don't, even when it required a 4-0 vote, a supermajority vote for us to sell the property, and it happened before the enabling legislation that we could spend the money. It may be easy to rationalize, but it may not be legal. But even there are other things like, I would say that there's no doubt in my mind that they were encouraged to overstate savings. These are estimates. Everything we're working on are basically of estimates. I think we have overstated savings. I think some of the savings involving programs are basically not completely accurate. And I also think the income's been overstated. So basically, I have to agree that this is putting us in what I consider a downward spiral that I think is going to come back to haunt us, and I'll be here to watch it, but I don't like that happening. So I'm going to vote no on this. I think we should have done a qualified, perhaps, but certainly not an unqualified.
Okay, please vote. Okay, on to item HO2. As part of what we submit to the county on the 17th next week, we have to include a resolution in the matter of the reduction in certificated staff due to reduction or elimination of particular kinds of services. The San Diego Education Association is going through a process now to ratify the agreement that we ratified last week. The results of that ratification vote will determine the number and the nature of this resolution. And so because of that, we're carrying over to a special board meeting on Sunday, March 14th, this resolution. It looks like we need to determine a time for the meeting on Sunday.
Anytime after 2 for me.
Anytime after 2.
I'm fine, and that's great.
I'll be out of town. You can reach me by phone.
Okay. So should we say 2 o'clock or 2:30? Or
2 o'clock's fine. 2 o'clock's fine.
2 o'clock.
If you give me a number to call in, I'll call.
Okay, so Sunday at 2 o'clock.
Okay.
All right.
The back will be here
by phone.
All right.
Okay, and then item H03, Superintendent Koba, clarification of this is an important item.
President Barrera, this has to do with the restructuring of two of the small school complexes. When we provided the budget strategies about 10 days ago, we had identified something called Option B on a spreadsheet, and that was clearly outdated. We have had conversation, you and I and Trustee Jackson, with the Crawford Complex principals and with the San Diego High School principals. We've asked them, based on preliminary reports of past history and some inconsistencies with academic performance, to provide for a staff leadership community proposal for restructuring to come back and identify strategies for improving academic performance within the affordabilities of the budget. Both of those campuses are organizing to do so, and we have a timeline and a charter for both of them. The charter is a plan to move out, and they will be presenting to the board in early May what they want to do. So this is a clarification of what we've tasked them to do. And I've already been out to Crawford to talk to the staff, and I will be out at San Diego High in the coming week.
And this has no money?
Move approval.
Well, this isn't it.
There's targeted savings. So in other words, that part of this motion is that, or clarification, is that they're going to come back with savings between the two schools.
That is their strategy right now.
Around $300,000. Is that correct?
Yeah, the clarification that I'm understanding is in a previous meeting and in a public document, there were I think 3 or 4 options that were put forward from staff about potential ways to restructure small, large high school complexes broken into small schools, and one of those options, I think item B. The dollar amount savings for item B showed up in our February 23rd line items. And so when we approved that line item, the understandable confusion from the principals at Crawford and San Diego is that what we were in fact approving was option B. We were not approving option B. In fact, we were holding that as a placeholder and asking for the principals to engage their community in a plan that comes from their community. So that's I think what the clarification
is.
Yes.
But they'll still come forward with the savings.
Yes.
Yeah.
Fair enough?
Yeah. Okay.
Move approval.
I move approval.
Well, you got a motion in a second. Okay. On to the superintendent's consent agenda. We have 2 speakers. I'll ask first. Ernest Asokar. He's coming in. Okay, and Jennifer Gervais. Yep.
Hi, good evening. My name is Jennifer Gervais. I am an education specialist. I work with mild, moderate, and moderate severe students at Horton Elementary. And I'm here to talk about the need for a standardized curriculum for our special ed students, the moderate severe students. And I want to encourage you to vote on the unique learning system. It came kind of a surprise to me that there is...
Item I-20, correct?
Pardon me?
I think it's item I-20.
I-20, that's what it is. Thank you.
Yeah.
It may come as a surprise that there is actually no standardized curriculum provided by the district for our students. It doesn't mean that there isn't curriculum and instruction happening, but it's being provided by our amazing special educators and their staff. We have anything from using our recycling, our egg cartons for counting, to lamination and Velcro. And if you're lucky enough and you get to go to Lakeshore, then you get to have the really great curriculum here. So you may ask why we need it if we have such great materials here, but we don't necessarily always have the time to go through our recycling or do the laminating and the Velcro or the money to go to Lakeshore. And most importantly, we really do need a standardized curriculum for our students. I mean, the gen education students have their standards, and we need the same for our special ed students. And secondly, it's also the law. The Williams settlement guarantees instructional material for all our students, and that should include our special education students. Third reason that we need to adopt a standardized curriculum for our students is that we're going for this notion that assessment drives instruction. And we assess our students with the CAPA at the end of the year, and yet we don't have the materials or the instruction, the curriculum provided for us to give this to our students. So we're assessing them basically on materials that we don't have. And the last reason that I encourage you to adopt this curriculum is that it's in the best interest of our students. I mean, we want to have access for all of our students to the California standards, and this is the way to do it. And when my students ask me, Ms. Gervais, why don't I have a math book? Why don't I have a reading book? Why don't I have these things that their friends and their brothers and their sisters have? I'll be able to provide them an answer. We can have this for all of our students. So, thank you.
My name is Ernie Azakar. I am a building service supervisor at Field Elementary at 4375 Bannock Avenue, San Diego 92117. I am honored to tell you that my son has been accepted to the United States Naval Academy class of 2014. The packet that I have given you will verify this. As his father, I am to accompany him for his swearing in as a midshipman on July 1st of this year. To do so, I need to purchase an airline tickets as soon as possible. I hold a TSA account with Equitable through the San Diego Unified School District. I attempted to withdraw the necessary funds to just cover the airline tickets and the expenses for the special occasion. I was denied my own money and told that I could not withdraw my own funds without the San Diego Unified School District trustee approval. I attempted to contact the chief financial officer, and he would not return my calls. I then attempted to contact the interim superintendent, and I had the same result. I am now addressing the Board of Education for written approval for this document that I have right here so that I may obtain my own money. The last sheet on this packet that I have given each of you is the mission statement of the San Diego Unified School District. The statement says, all San Diego students will graduate with the skills, motivation, curiosity, and resilience to succeed in their choice of college and career in order to lead and participate in a society of tomorrow. My son has chosen to serve his country as a United States naval officer. His first step is being sworn in as a midshipman in the United States Naval Academy.
I move that we allow you to withdraw those funds.
Second.
Okay.
May I finish, though?
Yes, go ahead.
By your own mission statement, my son has succeeded. Will you support my son by signing this document so I may obtain my own money to accompany him on his first step on his chosen career?
As far as I'm concerned, it's your money.
Thank you.
Thanks. Ernest, did you want to, was that what you wanted to address? Or I have item I-14 here.
Yes, that's what I wanted to say.
That's what you wanted to say?
Yes.
Okay.
Very good.
Okay.
I just need a signature.
Okay. Well, it's not related to, I don't see the relation.
Close enough.
Yeah, it's close enough. So, well, we've got a motion and a second to approve the release of these funds. Any comments or questions, Mr. Koba? Any?
Our bylaws allow us to act on any item as it comes to us.
Considering my comments on, does the CFO have any comments about this, or is this sort of, I'm not questioning, I just didn't asking?
Yeah, so earlier tonight I met him outside in the hallway and gave my business card and said I would be glad to meet with him. It's not as simple as the board deciding to go ahead and take action on it, because there's this thing called the Internal Revenue Service that we have to abide by certain rules and regulations. So what I've been trying to do is contact the firms that are not established with us from a data standpoint, as was recently required by the IRS back in last December of 2009. So what had been happening through not people in the district per se, but throughout across the country, there were companies that were allowing people to take distributions from their 403Bs.
So this is a distribution
accounts.
from a 401.
It's your 403B
401(3)B.
Is it TSA?
Yeah, so it's 403B. Based on what the IRS did, they said there are certain requirements that you have to abide by. And some of those requirements are reporting. So, for instance, let's say that I take a distribution out via hardship withdrawal. The issue that the IRS was having is they were saying that based on the paperwork that was supposed to have taken place, not in this circumstance, they were having trouble keeping track of those distributions. Because what has to happen when you take a distribution like that, you have to stop taking contributions until that loan is paid back. So there were two issues that...
Stop taking contributions from the individual?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, because don't contribute anymore because you got money essentially that you have to pay back based on the hardship withdrawal. So there are a couple things that I have to look at is, do the parameters of why he's taking the money, do that meet the IRS requirements of a hardship withdrawal? And what is it that we have to do with the other agencies of which I have no control over to ensure that they meet the standards that the IRS is abided by? Why? Because there could be some liability for the school district in the event that these distributions are given and the proper paperwork isn't tracked in the loan, the contribution amounts don't stop, and the loan that was essentially received doesn't get paid back to the account.
It's my understanding, though, that he can, hardship or no, he can take with penalties, he can make this withdrawal. So, but hardship or no. Anyway, you can figure this out. You're right. That's.
And I'm not saying I won't figure it out. I'm saying that's what I'm working on.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we've got a motion and a second on this.
Yeah.
Please vote. Okay. Board members, any items on the consent agenda that people wish to pull?
I know. I just thank the staff for the response to the questions that I had submitted, and I move that we, adopt the consent agenda.
So second that.
Yeah.
Okay. Please vote. Okay. We are adjourned.
Meet upstairs.
Recess.
We're recessed.
Recess.